Chapter 3753 Chapter 3753 Adventure 4 Chapter 3753 Adventure 4 The eldest son was still pulling a long face and acting like a father. He didn't say anything. Gao Mingjiang sneered. We're spending money together, but I'm the only one paying back the money? Do you think that's reasonable? No, of course not. Fearing that his brother was really gone, Gao Mingjiang's second eldest brother panicked. He turned around and glared at his mother. Unfortunately, she didn't take the hint. The eldest son didn't know what to do. He was supposed to be the boss of the family, but everyone listened to Gao Mingjiang. The second son was dropping so much hint with his eyes that his eyeballs were about to have cramp. Finally, his mother finally realized what he meant. She looked at her eldest son inquiringly. Should she pay up? The eldest son was so frustrated. He didn't want to part with the money. It just so happened that without Gao Mingjiang, they wouldn't know where to go next. So, it's only 10 taels of silver, isn't it? Since Mingjiang borrowed it, just pay up. The eldest son stormed off after that. Old Mrs. Gao rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. You're just a beggar. Where did you get the money? Did you steal it? If the girl had stolen the silver, why should she give it back? No. Feng Wu smirked. I have some flour too. Did you think I stole it too? You ate it, so spit it out now. The old lady said, You! The sharp-tongued girl was infuriating. Sonia looked at Feng Wu in admiration. Sister Feng was amazing. Her grandmother was the most unreasonable and vicious-tongued grandmother. Usually, she would make Sonia and her mother so frustrated that they couldn't retort. But now, Sister Feng was so glib. The girl's eyes lit up as she stared at Feng Wu. Old Mrs. Gao was furious, but Feng Wu wasn't done yet. She stared at the old lady and said, I don't have to travel with you, all right? Now give me back my money and the pancakes. I'm leaving. The pancakes? Immediately, the daughters-in-law and their children panicked. They had been enjoying the show, but now their cheese had been touched. Mother, look, the wife of the eldest son had always considered herself a kind woman. She stepped out and helped the old lady to her feet. Everyone, please calm down. She smiled at Feng Wu. Mom didn't say she wasn't going to give it back. Kiddo, don't worry. Let's talk like civilized people. The other daughters-in-law of the Gao family chimed in as well. They all tried to persuade the old lady to return the money. Didn't they care about the money? Of course they did. Each family would get 2 taels of silver if the money was divided, but they were fugitives, and money couldn't buy food at the moment. Her eldest daughter-in-law whispered something in the old lady's ear, and the old lady's eyes lit up. Finally, she gave Feng Wu 10 taels of silver. She glared at Feng Wu. Just this once. Lend it to Mingjiang again and I won't pay you back. Feng Wu took the silver and nodded. I won't lend Uncle Mingjiang any silver even if I have to watch you die. The old lady was furious. Meanwhile, Gao Mingjiang's brothers were trying to talk Gao Mingjiang out of it. Mingjiang, look, hasn't Mom given the money back to the girl? Come down here. The brothers had never been so friendly before, but now they were helping Gao Mingjiang off the carriage. Chapter 3754 Chapter 3754 Adventure 5 Chapter 3754 Adventure 5 Gao Mingjiang knew when to stop. I guess I'm not completely innocent. I shouldn't have given the silver to that soldier. It's all my fault. I won't do it again. His brothers blanched. If he hadn't given the soldier the silver. No, you didn't do anything wrong. Mingjiang, you've done a great job this time. Gao Mingjiang only smiled bitterly, obviously hurt. An idea struck the second eldest brother, and he told old Mrs. Gao, Mum, give Mingjiang 10 taels of silver. Old Mrs. Gao's eyes popped. That was all the money her family had. Her second son walked up to her and took 10 taels of silver from her. Mom, which is more important, the silver or your sons and grandsons? The old lady was speechless. In the end, 10 taels were taken away from her. The second son stuffed 10 taels of silver into Gao Mingjiang's hands. Brother, here's some silver for you. If something like this happens again, just use them whenever you find necessary. Our life is more important. Gao Mingjiang forced a smile and said, It's late. Let's boil some hot water and eat some pancake. We'll get some rest and leave early tomorrow. It's still dangerous here. The further away from here, the better. Yes. Only then did his brothers relax. The second son grabbed the third son away. They walked to a corner, and the second son slapped his younger brother. The third son was furious. Good job, said the eldest son. Brother! The third son protested. The eldest son slapped his brother as well. 10 taels of silver. You just can't keep your mouth shut. He walked away after that. The second son also cast a stern look at his younger brother. I know you and your wife don't like Mingjiang, but we can't leave this place without him. You'll have to figure it out yourself. He stormed off after that, leaving the third son behind. He was just jealous of Gao Mingjiang and had only said those things in passing. Why did everyone slap him? Just then, the old lady jumped up and slapped him as well. Mom! The third son stared at his mother in disbelief. His mother had always doted on him. 20 taels of silver. I just gave away 20 taels of silver for nothing. Shut up from now on. Old Mrs. Gao stormed off. The third son was really crying now. Meanwhile, the fourth branch of the Gao family was enjoying themselves. Gao Mingjiang had deliberately stopped his carriage at the outermost area, so as to keep watch for the others, but in fact, he didn't want to get too close. They had built their own campfire and were sitting around, boiling water and warming themselves. Thank you. Gao Mingjiang sat down opposite Feng Wu and mouthed those words. Feng Wu chuckled. Gao Mingjiang was such a smart guy. Sister Feng, you're amazing. You talked back to Grandma and won. Sonia went on worshipping Feng Wu. Feng Wu rubbed her head. Due to malnutrition, although Sonia was 10 years old, she still looked like a 7-year-old. Her hair was as yellow as straw. Feng Wu chuckled. Your grandmother is just unreasonable. If you're with reason, you can win all the arguments. In the end, Feng Wu asked, You're living such a miserable life. Why haven't you split up with the other branches? Once they were separated, Feng Wu could hunt some wild game for Gao Mingjiang's family. All the pancakes were simply too bland. Li smiled bitterly. Do you think we don't want to do that? Chapter 3755 Chapter 3755 Adventure 6 Chapter 3755 Adventure 6 Do you think we don't want to? It's just we can't. Li smiled bitterly and pointed at the old lady. Every time we brought it up, she threatened to kill herself. We could never succeed. Feng Wu rubbed her chin. It's really hard to do it while we're still seeking refuge. But those people were indeed her burdens. Li smiled bitterly. It's all fate. What can we do? All right, kids, go to bed. We still have to travel tomorrow morning. After that, Li took out the only bedroll in the carriage and laid it out in the lee of the wind so that Feng Wu and the 2 children could get in. What about you? Feng Wu asked. Li waved her off. We'll just sleep on the ground for the night. You little ones can easily catch a cold. We adults will be fine. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. No matter what Feng Wu said, Li insisted that they take the bedroll, and Feng Wu couldn't turn her down. Feng Wu sighed as soon as she was under the duvet. Why are you sighing? You're too young to do that. You'll grow into a little old hag. Little Phoenix teased her. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. You're awake. Although Feng Wu had lost her cultivation ability, she still had Little Phoenix. It was injured, but it could still fly and ask around. That was to say, it hadn't lost much of its ability. Seeing this, Little Phoenix knew that Feng Wu was going to give it trouble again. It gave Feng Wu a resigned look. "What do you want from me?" Feng Wu said, "I need to go with them, at least as far as the northern Yin kingdom. It'll take us at least another 10 days. The further north we go, the colder it gets. I can barely stand it myself, let alone them." Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu in resignation. "Do you want me to bring back a bedroll?" It was doable, but how are you going to explain the extra bedroll? Feng Wu rubbed her chin. "I don't need you to bring back a bedroll. Look around and see if you can find any houses. Make it look like we're just passing by, and I'll buy an extra one. If you can't find any houses, just make it look like someone has left it there, and I'll pick it up." Little Phoenix mimicked Feng Wu and nodded. "All right. They won't see me anyway." Little Phoenix was soon out of sight. "Get me some more supplies," Feng Wu reminded Little Phoenix in her head before she went to bed. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes at Feng Wu. It was just a little bird. Not only did it have to find the bedroll, but it also had to prepare the supplies. There was so much to do. However, at the thought of Feng Wu's pathetic state, Little Phoenix felt sorry for her. This family was very poor, but because of that, they were too poor to be spotted. Little Phoenix spent a lot of effort to find a bundle, 2 old duvets, and some rice, flour, and oil. It even prepared a bow. That way Feng Wu could shoot arrows. Little Phoenix had painstakingly prepared everything and put them on top of an old tree. After everything was ready, it flew into Feng Wu's sleeve and told her everything. Feng Wu smiled and went back to sleep. She woke up early the next morning. The Gao family was so poor that they couldn't afford breakfast. Chapter 3756, Chapter 3756, Adventure 7. Chapter 3756, Adventure 7. The Gao family was so poor that they couldn't afford breakfast. Therefore, they got up early in the morning, cleaned themselves up, and got into the carriage. They went as far as they could. They didn't have a chance to stop for lunch until noon. At noon, they were almost at the spot Little Phoenix had pointed out. Feng Wu held her stomach. "What's wrong?" Seeing the change in Feng Wu's expression, Li asked in concern. Feng Wu said, "It's nothing." Li said, "I can tell by the look on your face. Are you hungry?" Feng Wu chuckled. Teehee. Li was amused. She realized that although the girl wasn't very pretty, she was very likable. Mingjiang. Lady Li came out of the carriage and whispered something in Gao Mingjiang's ear. Their carriage led the way, and Gao Mingjiang nodded at his wife's words. "It's indeed almost noon. It's time to take a break." He raised a red flag, and the carriages behind him stopped as well. They stopped and started cooking. Feng Wu was a member of the 4th branch of the family, and the branches took turns doing chores every day. Today, it just happened to be their turn to gather firewood. Feng Wu already knew that. After they got off the carriage, Feng Wu took the 2 children from the 4th branch. "Xiaoshu, Sanya, let's go get some firewood," Li said. "Why are you 3 kids picking up firewood? I'll go get it." Of course, Feng Wu wanted to go. If she didn't go, she wouldn't be able to pick up her provisions. Hence, Feng Wu suggested, "Let's go together." Li said, "I can go with you, but you have to behave and stay where you are. It's dangerous up there. What if a wolf comes out?" Feng Wu nodded immediately. The 2 kids nodded as well. Only then did Li relax a little. The wife of the 3rd son arrived at that moment. Seeing that they were going to fetch some firewood, she suggested with a smile, "Sister-in-law, how about you stay here with the kids to make lunch, and I'll go fetch some firewood?" She wanted to make it up for what her husband did the day before. Picking up firewood was much more tiring than cooking. Li hesitated. Feng Wu turned her down with a smile. "Aunt, I was going to take a look in the woods. What if I catch a wild rabbit?" "Oh my!" Hearing that, Lady Gu almost burst out laughing. "You're such a braggart. How could you catch a wild rabbit? I'll kneel down in front of you if you can find an egg." The others all looked in that direction. After all, they had been out in the wild for so long and didn't have much chance to eat meat or fish. They couldn't stand the mention of wild rabbits. "I'll take a walk in the woods too." The third son ran into the woods as soon as he heard that. The second son said, "Brother, wait for me." The eldest son frowned and shouted, "Be careful! Don't go too deep. Come back if you can't find any rabbits." "All right," the two brothers said in the distance. "Your stuff is that way. They're heading for it." Little Phoenix was anxious. "Let's go before they take it away. I've painstakingly collected everything myself. It couldn't be too new or too old. That was so hard. God knew how many houses it had to visit to find everything. As for stealing, how could it be considered stealing? It had done as Feng Wu said and left behind a silver ingot. Everything was bought. Chapter 3757 Chapter 3757 Adventure 8 Chapter 3757 Adventure 8 Hearing that, Feng Wu took the two kids' hands and headed for the woods. According to Little Phoenix, in order to let Feng Wu pretend that she found the bundle by accident, it didn't hide the bundle very well. When Feng Wu and the kids walked into the woods, the two men were already gone. Feng Wu ignored them and headed for her destination. There were quite a few fruit trees in the woods, and there was even a persimmon tree covered with ripe persimmons. Persimmons! Sonia was the first to notice it, and she was so excited that she tried to climb up the tree. Li noticed it as well. She immediately took off her outer robe and spread it out on the ground to hold the persimmons. They were so close to the edge of the woods that everyone outside could hear them. Persimmons? Hearing the noise, the wife of the third son tossed the wok to her sister-in-law and rushed in. Seeing that Li had taken off her outer robe, the third daughter-in-law took off hers as well. They had been wearing all the clothes they had, so taking off a layer didn't really matter. As she picked, the third daughter-in-law shouted at her three sons, Jinju, Inju, and Tongju, "Do you want some nice persimmons or not? Give me a hand." Unfortunately, most of the persimmons had been destroyed by the wind and rain, and only a few were still edible. While they were picking the persimmons, Feng Wu said, "I'll go have a look and see if I can catch a pheasant or a hare." Li smiled bitterly. "You're making things up again. Don't go too far." Feng Wu nodded. "I'll walk around and get some firewood." Only then did Li agree. As the third daughter-in-law fought over the persimmons with Li, she teased the latter. "Sister-in-law, your niece is so funny. Why did she have to look for a rabbit instead of picking all the persimmons? Haha, what kind of rabbit can she possibly find? Even if she can find it, will she be able to catch it?" Li was a little displeased, for she really thought of Feng Wu as her niece now. The third daughter-in-law was elated to see that Li was upset, and she said deliberately, "Sister-in-law, she's such a poor girl. She's brought so much bad luck to you all." Li threw a dirty look at her sister-in-law. "That's bullshit," her sister-in-law said. "I'm not. Look at her ragged clothes. She looks like a beggar. She can't have a good life. I'm telling you." Just then, they heard a surprised cry a short distance away. It was Feng Wu. "What's going on? What's going on?" Thinking that Feng Wu had been bitten by a snake, Li slid down the tree and tripped. It hurt. Li was almost in tears, but the girl's safety was at stake and she couldn't care less about the pain. She shouted, "Mingjiang! Mingjiang! Come here!" She ran toward Feng Wu as she shouted, so fast that her shoes flew off. "Mom! Mom!" Her two children followed her in a hurry. However, the third daughter-in-law panicked a little. Was there a snake over there? Well, she wouldn't go then. That was so scary. Now that Li was gone, all the persimmons were hers. Hence, she went back to picking the persimmons. Li panicked when she saw that Feng Wu wasn't there. Little Feng, Li was worried sick. Hearing her voice, Feng Wu stuck her head out of the tree. Aunt, I'm right here. Chapter 3758 Chapter 3758 Adventure 9 Chapter 3758 Adventure 9 Seeing Feng Wu sitting on the tree, Li felt her knees buckle, and she almost fell to the ground. Are you all right? Li was still anxious. Feng Wu waved at him. I'm fine. I'm fine. Hearing that, Li let out a breath of relief. At the same time, she wanted to grab the girl and spank her. Why did you scream? You're scaring me out of my wits. Li pressed a hand on her chest and gasped for air. The two children imitated her and patted their chests. Their faces were ghastly pale. Feng Wu smiled and raised the rabbit. Look, what's this? Wow, it's a gray rabbit. It's so fat. Let's roast it. The two kids' eyes were twinkling and they were almost drooling. What? A rabbit? After picking the last persimmon, the third daughter-in-law was about to leave when she heard this. She quickly walked toward Feng Wu and saw the rabbit in her hand. Oh my! She shuddered and almost fell to the ground. There really is a rabbit! Feng Wu looked down at her. What did you say when we were outside? The third daughter-in-law said, What did I say? Feng Wu chuckled. You said even if I found an egg, you would kneel in front of me. I'm ready. Kneel. The third daughter-in-law was speechless. Li was amused. What are you talking about? Get off the tree. Feng Wu tossed the hair to Gao Mingjiang and told Li, I can't come down yet. Li asked anxiously, Why can't you come down? Feng Wu pointed at something over her head. There's something over there. I'm going to have a look. Everyone followed Feng Wu's gaze. But from their angle, the leaves were so dense that they couldn't see anything. The third daughter-in-law said to Feng Wu, You're already very lucky to have a rabbit. Do you expect to find gold or what? Feng Wu ignored her and jumped up the tree like a cat. Although she had lost her spiritual essence, she was still strong enough to handle the tree. When she was 10 meters away, she grabbed something and shouted, Out of my way! I'm going to throw something down. Was there really something in the tree? Everyone moved away when they heard that. With a thump, Feng Wu threw the bundle on the ground. Because Feng Wu was dozens of meters above ground, and the ground was damp, the impact left a mark on the ground. A bundle? Why is there a bundle on the tree? The third daughter-in-law couldn't believe her eyes. Immediately, all eyes were on Feng Wu. Feng Wu looked equally confused. I was just trying to catch a rabbit, but it was quick-witted. It jumped into a tree, so I climbed up here to catch it. That's when I saw the bundle. I wonder what's inside. That was right. It was wrapped up tight. What was inside? Is it something bad? Something that can get people killed? The third daughter-in-law couldn't stand it when other people weren't better off. She gave Feng Wu a sympathetic look. Little Feng, you'd better move back. What if there's a dead body inside? Chapter 3759 Chapter 3759 Adventure 10 Chapter 3759 Adventure 10 Feng Wu seemed genuinely frightened. Aunt, don't say that! The third daughter-in-law glanced at Feng Wu. I'm telling the truth. Some people don't bury bodies properly and just put them up on trees. Why did you have to take it down? You're so evil. Feng Wu feigned a frightened face, took a step back, and hid behind Li. Li looked like a mother hen protecting a chicken. She threw a dirty look at her sister-in-law. Stop talking nonsense. What if you scare the children? All three children were ghastly pale. Just then, the Gao family heard the noise and rushed in. What's going on? What's all the noise? The eldest son glared at the others. The third daughter-in-law said, I'm so glad you're here. You can be the judge. Isn't she a bad girl? She pointed at Feng Wu as she spoke. Someone hid a dead body in a tree, but this girl rushed over and threw it down. It fell to the ground. How can anyone be so wicked? She's just a little beggar. Infuriated, Li wanted to hit the woman. Old Mrs. Li flared up and glared at Feng Wu. How dare you touch a dead body? Don't you know that it'll poison us if it's been dead for too long? Your hands are dirty. If you touch our food, we'll be poisoned to death. The third daughter-in-law nodded. Mother, you're right. She's so ill-bred. Feng Wu glanced at the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Great. That was what she had been waiting for. They had walked into a trap on their own. Who told you it was a dead body? I pinched it just then, but it wasn't a dead body. Feng Wu feigned a weak voice. Who told you it wasn't a dead body? How could anyone put such a big bundle on a tree? What else could it be? The third daughter-in-law wouldn't believe it. Right now, she had her hands on her waist and was ready to go all out. We'll know what's inside after we open it. Gao Mingjiang glanced at his mother and sister-in-law. Old Mrs. Gao smirked. No matter what's in there, it's Feng's. Whatever bad luck it is, it's hers. Lady Gu nodded. That's right. We can't let that girl ruin our family's good luck. Feng Wu frowned. I think there's something good inside. The third daughter-in-law smirked. Good stuff? That's hilarious. Granny Gao was still thinking about the 20 taels of silver, and she was furious at Feng Wu. Even if it's gold and silver, the Gao family won't take anything from you. If it's bad luck, I hope God won't blame it on the Gao family. After that, she cast a stern look at her sons. Dig a hole in the ground. Dig a hole? Why? Everyone looked at her in bewilderment. Old Mrs. Gao glared at her third son. Didn't your wife tell you? There's a dead body inside. Bury it. After that, she turned to leave. Gao Mingjiang didn't know what to say. They hadn't even opened it yet, and they were already talking about dead bodies. Without another word, he unwrapped the bundle. The contents spilled all over the floor. Ah! The third daughter-in-law screamed. Chapter 3760 Chapter 3760 Surprise 1 Chapter 3760 Surprise 1 Ah! The third daughter-in-law screamed. Everyone jumped at her voice. They were astonished when they saw what had rolled out of the package. The bedroll. It's so thick. And what's this? Rice. Fine rice. What's that? There's a bow. And everyone was astonished when they examined everything. Before they knew it, everyone had gathered around. There are so many of them. Where did they come from? Old Mrs. Gao was the first to react and tried to take them away. Seeing the old lady run toward the bundle, her other 3 daughters-in-law all take off, trying to outrun the old lady. The old lady was furious. Get out of my way. This belongs to the family. Stop trying to take it. I'm not dead yet. Feng Wu gave them a half-smile. Gao Mingjiang frowned and shouted, Stop it. He was the most capable man in the team. Moreover, he was infuriated, and his voice frightened everyone. Everyone fell silent. Old Mrs. Gao was a little scared of her 4th son as well, so she turned to Gao. Mingjiang. Mingjiang, what are you doing? Gao Mingjiang stared at the old lady. Is that yours? You can't take it. Old Mrs. Gao wouldn't have it. Of course it's mine. Didn't you find it? What's yours is ours. Li almost laughed. But we don't own it. The old lady glared at her. Shut up. You have no right to speak here. Li felt aggrieved. Despite her grievance, she toughened up and said, Why can't I say anything? Miss Feng found it, so it has to be hers. No one is allowed to take it away. Of course, the old lady wouldn't accept it. But before she could say anything, Gao Mingjiang spoke again. My wife is right. Miss Feng found the bundle, so everything is hers. No one is allowed to take anything from her. The old lady wouldn't admit it. But isn't she ours now? Li was so angry that she laughed. How can she be ours? She's only pretending to be my niece from my mother's side. The old lady didn't know what to say. She had made up an identity and thought that it was real. The old lady said, "She's teamed up with us before." Lee said, "She's paid you for your service. If that doesn't count, just spit out all the flour you ate." That woman, old Mrs. Gao wanted to slap Lee. Lee smirked. "Go ahead. I dare you. Touch me, and my husband will split up with you. We'll go our separate ways." She had never been this tough before, but for some unknown reason, she felt that she shouldn't have been bullied like this when Feng Wu was around. Miss Feng was right. Kind? Why bother? She didn't want to make other people happy anymore. At that thought, she glared at old Mrs. Gao and wouldn't give in. Old Mrs. Gao was a little frightened. Why was her daughter-in-law, who used to be so easy to bully, so angry all of a sudden? She couldn't control Lee anymore. Just then, the third daughter-in-law mumbled something. Chapter 3761 Chapter 3761 Surprise 2 Chapter 3761 Surprise 2 Just then, the third daughter-in-law mumbled, "Stop saying the bundle belongs to the girl. I think you just want it for yourself." She wasn't loud, but Lee heard her. Lee smirked. "We're still one family. If I take the bundle, you'll only take advantage of me. I'm not that stupid." The third daughter-in-law said, "You!" The third son didn't want the quarrel to go on, fearing that Gao Mingjiang would say that they were going to split up and abandon them, so he tried to smooth things over. Fine. It's just a few things. There's no need to argue. We're all family here. How about this? I'll give all the big pieces to Mingjiang. As for the condiments, Mother will be in charge of them. I went through a lot of trouble to find those things." Little Phoenix shouted in Feng Wu's ear. "How dare these people take it? Slap him." Feng Wu smirked and said, "You can take half of the condiments. I'll take everything else. No one is allowed to take anything from me without my permission." Although Feng Wu didn't have any spiritual essence now, she was still very intimidating when she exerted her power. In the end, most of the things were moved to Gao Mingjiang's carriage. "Rabbit! Fat rabbit!" Xiaoshu and Sonia almost jumped to their feet. "Come, let's roast some rabbits." Feng Wu led them to where the stove was set up. Gao Mingjiang went to the creek, washed the rabbit paper, and handed it to Feng Wu. Feng Wu then smeared a layer of honey on the rabbit. As for where it came from, of course it was in the big bundle. The rabbit was roasted with honey, and the aroma filled the air. The fourth branch of the family had its own stove, and the rest of the family shared a bigger stove nearby. The aroma soon filled the air. Other people might be able to stand it, but the third daughter-in-law couldn't stop complaining. "Why are they eating rabbits and we're eating plain pancakes? I won't have it." Old Mrs. Gao was equally frustrated. The others weren't too happy either. However, Feng Wu only glanced at them and showed no intention to share the food with them. She divided the rabbit into 4 parts. One for herself, one for Gao Mingjiang, one for Li, and one for the 2 children. There wasn't much meat left after the entrails were removed, and the meat had shrunk significantly after it was cooked. Therefore, the rabbit in Feng Wu's hand was only the size of her palm. Gao Mingjiang looked over his shoulder and sighed when he saw how eager his mother was. He went up to old Mrs. Gao and said, "Mother, you can have mine." The others thought that the old lady would at least pretend that she didn't want it. But in fact the eldest son, who hadn't eaten meat for a long time, snatched the meat out of Gao Mingjiang's hand and said coldly, "You're useless. Is that all you got?" The other 3 families had a lot of children. Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly and cursed himself for being so stupid. It had been a while since he ate meat, and he had just been scolded for sharing. He shook his head and went back to the fire. As for how to split the rabbit, it was up to old Mrs. Gao. After Gao Mingjiang went back, Li and the 2 children felt sorry for him. Gao Mingjiang patted their hands. Don't worry. Mom has always been like this. Li said grumpily, I can't control my temper anymore. Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly. We'll see when we get to our destination. Nothing can be predicted while we're on the road. Chapter 3762, Chapter 3762, Fright 1. Chapter 3762, Fright 1. Li nodded. She knew what Gao Mingjiang meant. We haven't settled down in the northern Yen kingdom yet, and we don't know if we'll live or die. She heaved a long sigh, her eyes filled with sorrow. Both children gave their mother concerned looks. Sensing their uneasiness, Li rubbed their heads and smiled bitterly. You guys should eat now. We'll be on our way when you're full. Sonia asked, Mom, will we be in danger? Before Li could say anything, Gao Mingjiang said, Dad's here. There's no danger. Just eat and sleep. Everything will be fine when we get to northern Yen. Sonia and Xiaoshu nodded solemnly. Seeing that Sonia had stopped eating after 2 bites, Li asked, Why won't you eat? With a solemn look on her face, Sonia said, Mother, we don't know how dangerous this journey will be, and we don't know if we'll have anything to eat in the future. I want to save my food and take another bite when I'm starving. Honey, Li sighed and pulled Sonia into her arms. Things will get better. We'll have enough food and warm clothes when we get there. It was late autumn, and the air was colder in the middle of the night. Gao Mingjiang's family was better prepared. They used to have 2 bedrolls, but because the other families didn't have enough bedding, the old lady took one of them and gave it to her 3rd son. Before Feng Wu arrived, Gao Mingjiang's family had been shivering on their 5M bedding. The 2 children slept in the middle, while Li and Gao Mingjiang, who had been sleeping on either side of the bed, were mostly exposed. Now that Feng Wu had found a new bedroll, she took the 2 kids and shared a bed. Li and Gao Mingjiang shared another. Everybody slept well now. The family found a leeward spot behind a big rock, and were ready to sleep when they heard footsteps. Sister-in-law. It sounded like the second daughter-in-law, who didn't talk much. Feng Wu yawned and thought to herself. Sonia, who had been sleeping soundly in Feng Wu's arms, woke up right away and was on the alert. She looked like a bristling cat. Xiaoshu was alarmed as well. Feng Wu looked at them in bewilderment and asked in a low voice, What's wrong? Throwing her arms around Feng Wu, Sonia asked nervously, Sister Feng, are we going to lose our bed? In the dark, Feng Wu saw that Sonia was looking at her nervously, and so was Xiaoshu. Feng Wu was confused. How can someone take our bed? Sonia said, Can we keep our bed then? She knew by now how capable Sister Feng was. Even her grandmother wouldn't be her match. Feng Wu nodded. Of course. Why should we give our own bed to someone else? What should we sleep on? In order to avoid detection, Feng Wu had destroyed her own cultivation and was too weak to withstand the cold. The 2 kids nodded immediately, their eyes twinkling. By then, Li had left with her sister-in-law. They didn't go very far because it would be dangerous. That distance was enough for Feng Wu to hear their conversation. After praising Li's family, the second daughter-in-law went on crying about how difficult it had been for them. In the end, she turned to Li for help. Sister-in-law, there's nothing else I can do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have. Chapter 3763 Chapter 3763, Fright 2. Chapter 3763, Fright 2. I really have no choice. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to beg you at this hour. The second daughter-in-law said anxiously. Sister-in-law, I know you don't have much either, but there are so many people in my family, and we only have 1 bedroll. We don't have enough duvets for the children alone, but you have 2. Li frowned. Before, she was a cowardly woman, but after the near-death experience with her 2 children, and after seeing how tough Feng Wu was, she had unknowingly become tougher. She used to never say no, but now, she shook her head. Sister-in-law, as you know, I don't have much either. Her sister-in-law said, I know, but you can turn the duvet sideways. That'll cover you all. Li frowned. Sister-in-law, what are you talking about? There aren't just the four of us. Feng is with us too. How can she sleep in the same bed with me and my husband? You're talking nonsense. The second daughter-in-law said, She's just a little beggar. We're not family. You don't have to. Sister-in-law. Li scolded her. She's my niece. Not an outsider. Moreover, we've given away a bedroll already. Why should we give away another one? I won't have it. Her sister-in-law was a little displeased. Li waved her off. You don't have to say another word. I'm not lending you anything. She then turned to leave. They raised their voices this time, so many people heard them. So, it really was about the bedroll, many people thought to themselves. The look on the second daughter-in-law's face kept changing as she watched Li leave. However, the anger soon disappeared from her face, and she went up to the old lady with a smile. When she walked past Gao Mingjiang's family, she smiled at the others and seemed to be in a great mood. However, Sonia grabbed Feng Wu's hand anxiously, as did Xiaoshu. After she left, Sonia and Xiaoshu looked nervously at Feng Wu. Feng Wu smiled. No one can take away what's ours. Don't worry. A few steps away, the third daughter-in-law smirked at her husband. I told you already. Your second brother's wife isn't as simple as she looks. Look how capable she is. She can ask for a bed with a wave of her hand. Her husband threw a dirty look at her. Shut up. Have you forgotten? Who did you take that bedroll from? The one we're sleeping in now belongs to Mingjiang. Her wife cringed and didn't dare to speak, fearing that her bedroll would be taken away. Just then, the second daughter-in-law went up to the old lady, who had been angry at the noise, but the second daughter-in-law was able to appease the old lady with a few words. The old lady frowned and stared at her. Are you sure? The second daughter-in-law nodded. I saw it. It's really 2 meters long. It can fit a lot of people. Mum, look at my 7 children. They're all freezing. If there's a 2-meter-long duvet, they'll be able to get through. Mum, what do you think? The old lady rolled her eyes at her daughter-in-law. You know what Li is like now. She's so tough that she can talk back to me. The second daughter-in-law cajoled the old lady until her head swam. Mom, all 7 of them are your grandchildren. Chapter 3764 Chapter 3764 The Row 1 Chapter 3764 The Row 1 Mum, my 7 children are all your grandsons and granddaughters. The second daughter-in-law gave the old lady a pleading look. Old Mrs. Gao didn't like Gao Mingjiang's family to begin with, and she was infuriated by her second daughter-in-law's provocation. She rose to her feet and grabbed a stick as thick as her arm. Gao Mingjiang had made it for her so that it would be easier for her to walk around. Bring out the 3 boys. Leaning on a stick, old Mrs. Gao walked very fast. The second daughter-in-law was secretly elated and immediately had her 3 boys follow the old lady. The 3 boys didn't like the idea at first, but their mother whispered in their ears, telling them that there were warm duvets in the 4th branch. It was late autumn and they were in the middle of nowhere. Everyone was freezing, and the 3 boys couldn't stand the cold. They all ran toward the old lady. By then, old Mrs. Gao was standing next to Gao Mingjiang's family. Gao Mingjiang's family must have heard all the noise, but no one wanted to talk to the old lady and wanted her to leave as soon as possible. As a result, Gao Mingjiang ignored her. Old Mrs. Gao couldn't stand her son's attitude, so she hit the bedroll with her stick. She couldn't bring herself to hit her son, so she hit Li instead. Gao Mingjiang shielded Li with his own body. With a thump, the thick stick hit him on the back. Mom! Gao Mingjiang had a temper as well. He threw a dirty look at the old lady. What are you doing in the middle of the night? Are you going to let us sleep or not? Seeing that she had hit her fourth son, the old lady felt a little guilty, but she flared up when she saw what Gao Mingjiang was doing. Sleep? I want to sleep, but you won't let me. After that, the old lady told the 3 boys of the second branch of the family, "Do you see that bedroll? You can sleep there." She turned to leave after that. Seeing the warm bed, the 3 boys cried out in joy and rushed toward it. The old lady smirked inwardly. If Li wouldn't lend the bedroll, she could just let the boys sleep here. She would let them freeload off Gao Mingjiang's food and finish all the flour. Both Xiaoshu and Sonia looked furious. Dad! Mom! The 3 boys were tugging at the duvet, but so were Xiaoshu and Sonia. It was obvious that the 2 kids weren't the 3 boys' match, and they were almost in tears. Li was exasperated and yelled at the 3 boys. "What are you doing? Let go of the duvet." The old lady struck down at Li with her thick stick. "This is the Gao family's business. It's none of your business. Let go of the bedroll." Seeing that a fight was about to break out over a bed, Feng Wu was speechless. She really didn't expect that they would quarrel over a bed. Little Phoenix didn't know what to say. On second thought, Feng Wu realized that surviving in this vast wilderness was probably their biggest problem. It was precisely because of this that the people monitoring the sky and trying to find her would never expect that she would be in such a team, which was why she was safe. Feng Wu had wanted to kick the 3 boys away, but she didn't plan to do that now. With Gao Mingjiang around, he would definitely protect his wife and children. As expected. Chapter 3765 Chapter 3765 The Row 2 Chapter 3765 The Row 2 As expected, Gao Mingjiang grabbed the thick stick and bellowed at the old lady. "Mother! What are you doing?" After that, he snatched the stick from the old lady and threw it at the 3 boys. They all burst into tears when they were hit by the stick. "Dad! Mom! My uncle is killing us! Help!" The old lady was shocked by what she saw. Her 4th son. Gao Mingjiang had never been obedient, but he had never been this merciless either. "Go away!" Gao Mingjiang tossed the 3 boys to their father, who had just arrived. Mingjiang, the second eldest son, was furious. "What kind of uncle are you?" Gao Mingjiang smirked. "I'd like to know what kind of a father you are. You lost your bedroll, so you've been asking my family for everything all the time." His brother blushed. That was indeed the case. They didn't have much money to begin with. Moreover, they were in such a hurry that they didn't bring many belongings with them when they took off. As a result, they had to rely on Gao Mingjiang for almost all their expenses on this trip. However, yours is the Gao family's, isn't it? You don't own anything. Old Mrs. Gao glared at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang smirked. "I'll leave without taking anything then. I don't want anything. I'm leaving this family." "No!" Old Mrs. Gao refused outright. Gao Mingjiang was in charge of everyone's well-being and safety, and he wouldn't be allowed to leave. The other brothers shook their heads as well. Gao Mingjiang smirked and told his wife, "Pack up. We're leaving tonight." Li was bewildered, but she still followed Gao Mingjiang's order and started moving the things into the carriage. Feng Wu was amused. These people were so unreasonable. Since they all depended on Gao Mingjiang, why did they pick on him all the time? Did these people think that Gao Mingjiang wouldn't abandon them just because they were his mother and brothers? They were too confident in themselves. Feng Wu felt sorry for Gao Mingjiang. Soon, everything was packed. Li walked up to Gao Mingjiang and tugged at his sleeve. Gao Mingjiang looked at old Mrs. Gao, who was so angry that her face was livid. She stared at Gao Mingjiang. "Are you really leaving?" Gao Mingjiang nodded. "I have to protect my wife and children because no one else will." Old Mrs. Gao asked, "What about your mother? Are you going to leave me behind?" Gao Mingjiang said, "My 3 brothers can look after you." Old Mrs. Gao said, "No, they won't." Feng Wu snickered. The old lady knew perfectly well how unreliable her other sons were. Gao Mingjiang remained unperturbed. Seeing the determination in her son's eyes, old Mrs. Gao panicked for no reason. It was as if she had lost her faith. Old Mrs. Gao burst into tears. "Gao Mingjiang, how could you do this? How could you abandon your mother? How could I have such an unfilial son? If I had known, I would have drowned you in the toilet. You heartless man!" Old Mrs. Gao pounded her chest and stomped her foot, rolling around on the ground. Gao Mingjiang gave her a long look and suddenly dropped to his knees. Chapter 3766, Chapter 3766, Leave 1. Chapter 3766, Leave 1. Gao Mingjiang gave her a long look and suddenly dropped to his knees. Thump, thump, thump. Gao Mingjiang kowtowed 3 times, then jumped into the carriage. Hiya! Gao Mingjiang drove the carriage away. What? The Gao family was dumbfounded. Gao Mingjiang had mentioned several times that if they picked on his family again, they would go their separate ways, but no one believed him. They thought he wouldn't leave them behind. Even if he would abandon his brothers and sisters-in-law, he would never abandon his mother. But now, Mom, Mingjiang is gone. Seeing that the old lady was still standing there in disbelief, her second son rushed over, grabbed her by the shoulder, and shook her. "Mum, wake up!" For a moment, everyone was shouting at her. Only then did old Mrs. Gao come back to herself. She was frustrated when she saw that the carriage was only a black dot in the dark. "So be it. We'll do just fine without him." The old lady smirked. "We don't need to follow them. Just let them go. We won't die without them." She sat down on the ground and snorted. Realizing that Gao Mingjiang had really abandoned them, the others were angry as well. They snorted and said, "Mother is right. So be it. I'm sure we'll be fine." After that, they all went back to bed. "Brother, the second son looked at his older brother guiltily. The oldest son patted him on the shoulder. "Brother, it's not your fault. Mingjiang is heartless." The third son nodded as well. "That's right. How can he do that? He's so protective of his wife and children. Aren't our children his nieces and nephews? He's so selfish." "Stop it!" An angry voice broke the silence. Everyone looked up and saw that it was Gao Mingkuan. His eldest brother glared at him. "Gao Mingkuan, what are you doing?" Throwing a rod over his shoulder, Gao Mingkuan smirked. "I'm going to find my brother." "How dare you?" This eldest brother glared at him. None of the other 3 could fight. If Gao Mingkuan was gone, no one would be able to protect them. Gao Mingkuan snorted and wanted to leave. However, old Mrs. Gao stopped him with teary eyes. "Mingkuan, are you leaving me as well? Do you not care about me anymore?" Gao Mingkuan frowned. "Mother, it's not that I don't want to look after you, but you've crossed the line. Brother Mingjiang has been doing everything for us this whole time. We've been eating his food and spending his money. Mother, why did you take all the money from him and insist on keeping it to yourself? Is that even fair?" "Of course it's fair." Old Mrs. Gao smirked. "He's my son, so he has to work for me. What's his belongs to the family. So what if we all use it together? If I don't take the money from him, your other brothers will starve to death." The other sons all nodded. Old Mrs. Gao said, "If he's so capable, it's only natural that he looks after his brothers and their children." Chapter 3767, Chapter 3767, Leaving 2. Chapter 3767, Leaving 2. The other sons nodded again. Gao Mingkuan was furious. "You leeches! You've been feeding him money without even saying thank you. My brother is right to leave. I wouldn't give you a dime if I were him. I'm leaving too. Gao Mingquan stared at them. All his 3 older brothers were lazy, hypocritical, and selfish. They took advantage of Gao Mingjiang and never appreciated his kindness. I'm leaving too. Gao Mingquan stormed off. You're not leaving. You can't leave. Her brothers and sisters-in-law grabbed him in unison. Without Gao Mingjiang, they could only count on Gao Mingquan. If even Gao Mingquan abandoned them, they wouldn't be able to survive. Mother, the second daughter-in-law tugged at the old lady. Old Mrs. Gao found her second daughter-in-law quite annoying at the moment. Had it not been for her, Gao Mingjiang would never have left. But under the circumstances, the old lady didn't have time to blame anyone. She stared at Gao Mingquan. Are you leaving? If you do that, I'll kill myself in front of you. But Gao Mingquan only smirked. This wasn't the first time that the old lady had threatened to kill herself. Every time Gao Mingjiang wouldn't do as she said, she would threaten him with that. Gradually, Gao Mingjiang became distant from his mother. Anyway, she was all bark and no bite. Gao Mingquan didn't think much of it and still wanted to leave. Old Mrs. Gao gritted her teeth. She recalled how decisive Gao Mingjiang had been when he left, and the thought pained her. Somehow, she summoned up her courage and cried out. Thump! She smashed her head into a wall nearby. Mom! The second daughter-in-law only cried out after the old lady smashed her head into the rock. She could have stopped the old lady in time. With what had happened to the old lady, everyone turned around in a hurry, only to see blood gushing out of the old lady's forehead. The eldest son smacked Gao Mingquan on the head. Are you trying to kill? Mom! Mom! Please don't die. The second daughter-in-law rushed over and threw her arms around the old lady. Old Mrs. Gao was actually fine. She was about to scold Gao Mingquan when her second daughter-in-law whispered something in her ear. The old lady immediately changed her mind and pretended to be very weak. Mum's breathing is very weak. She's dying. Her second daughter-in-law shouted at Gao Mingquan. Gao Mingquan rushed to her side. Mom! Old Mrs. Gao opened her eyes and gave Gao Mingquan a long look. She only said, Mingquan, I want to see your brother one last time. Tears rolled down the old lady's cheeks as she spoke. Gao Mingquan was flustered. He had thought that the old lady was only putting on an act, but, I'll go get him now. Gao Mingquan jumped into a carriage and dashed off. Old Mrs. Gao only sat up after Gao Mingquan left. Everyone looked at her. Old Mrs. Gao snorted. Did he think he could take off with his little family and leave all of us behind? In his dreams. That's right. The third daughter-in-law nodded. Don't even think about abandoning us. We're his responsibility. However, no matter how long the old lady waited, Gao Mingquan never showed up. A few hours passed. They woke up at dawn, but Gao Mingquan still hadn't come back, nor had Gao Mingjiang what was going on. Chapter 3768 Chapter 3768 What's Going On? 1. Chapter 3768 What's Going On? 1. What was going on? However, old Mrs. Gao and the others couldn't care less about Gao Mingquan now, for they had run into some new trouble. Because while they were sleeping, a group of people were sneaking toward them. Boss, I've figured it out. They have 2 capable sons, but they're nowhere to be found. That family is very vulnerable now. The speaker was a young man. He had approached the third daughter-in-law of the Gao family, pretending to be weak. He then gave her a steamed bun and got everything he needed to know from her. He knew Gao Mingjiang was gone, Gao Mingquan had gone to look for him, and everyone else was very upset. The young man named Mo Ping told everything to his leader. They were a team of bandits that had entrenched themselves in Flying Tiger Mountain. They used to be from good families, but because they couldn't survive in the wilderness anymore, they turned into bandits and robbed passers-by in this area. However, there weren't many of them, so they only robbed small group. If a passing group seemed tough, they wouldn't dare to make a move. Have you gathered all the information? Is it correct? The leader stared at Mo Ping. Mo Ping grinned. Boss, I handed a woman a steamed bun, and that stupid woman told me everything. They're a family. There's an old lady, her 5 sons, and their wives and kids. The 2 youngest sons are the most capable ones, but they're gone. The rest of them are all useless. Good. Boss Ding patted Mo Ping on the shoulder. If you succeed this time, you'll be rewarded. Mo Ping asked excitedly, Boss, can I have a horse? Why not? With a wave of his hand, Ding said, Follow me. There were only over a dozen or so bandits, and they carefully made their way toward the Gao family's campsite. Had it been any other day, someone would have kept watch, and Gao Mingjiang would have arranged everything. But now that Gao Mingjiang was gone, no one else was there to give instructions. They went to bed, snoring loudly. Seeing that the members of the Gao family were fast asleep, Mo Ping looked at Ding and made a throat-slitting gesture. Should I cut their heads off? That was what Mo Ping meant. Ding pondered for a moment. He couldn't help but recall how intimidating Gao Mingjiang was, and he shuddered. If we don't wake them up, we'll grab the thing and leave. If we wake them up, we'll kill them. Ding decided not to go too far. The others nodded in agreement. They weren't born criminals, so they didn't try to kill anyone. The members of the Gao family were fast asleep. They didn't even wake up when the carriage was driven away, let alone the horses. Someone cried out, Stop! It was Gao Mingkuan. Not only did he frighten Ding and his men, but it also woke up the Gao family. Who's there? What's going on? The eldest son didn't like being woken up. By then, Gao Mingkuan had dashed off with a stick. The robbers have taken the carriages. Stop them. Robbers. The carriages. The sleepy members of the Gao family woke up from their reverie. They were dumbfounded when they saw what was going on. Chapter 3769 Chapter 3769 What was going on? 2. Chapter 3769 What was going on? 2. They were astonished when they saw what was going on. The carriages carrying all their luggage were gone. Gao Mingkuan was chasing after them. In front of Gao Mingkuan, a group of people were driving the carriages away. They were moving so fast that Gao Mingkuan couldn't keep up. Those people seemed to be very pleased with themselves, and they all turned around to show off. The robbers! Only then did the members of the Gao family realize that they had been robbed. Ah! Our carriages! Food! All our food is there! And everything we've saved! And the silver! Without the carriages, how were they supposed to travel? How were they going to survive without food? Without money, what would they do from now on? Even old Mrs. Gao's silver was in the carriage, so she ran as fast as she could. She shouted at the top of her lungs as she ran, asking the carriages to stop. The other members of the Gao family finally heard her scream. They ran as fast as they could and shouted the same thing. They tried everything, from threats to bribes, but to no avail. Not only weren't they going to give back the carriages, but half a dozen people even jumped out and surrounded Gao Mingkuan, beating him up. We're taking these carriages. If you don't want to die, get lost. In the end, Mo Ping kicked Gao Mingkuan, jumped into the carriage, and left with the others. Gao Mingkuan curled up to protect his head and internal organs. He was injured in many places and even had a broken bone. He lay on his stomach and couldn't even move a finger. He could only watch as the group of people rode off in their carriages until they turned into black dots in the distance. By then, the Gao family had finally caught up with him. Seeing Gao Mingkuan lying on the ground, the second son was worried sick. He bellowed at Gao Mingkuan, "Where are our carriages?" Immediately, everyone gave Gao Mingkuan accusing looks. Gao Mingquan was covered in wounds, and it was so painful that he couldn't utter a word. The second son shouted at Gao Ming, "I'm talking to you. Where are the carriages?" Gao Mingquan shook his head. "They've taken the carriages away. Gone." The second son was furious. He pointed at Gao Mingquan and scolded him. "How could you let the carriages get stolen? Do you know that they contain everything we have?" The third son shouted anxiously, "There's food up there. We've saved up so much. How are we supposed to proceed without a carriage? Are we going to walk on foot?" Poor Gao Mingquan. He was so angry that he could barely breathe. "You!" At that moment, his sisters-in-law finally arrived with old Mrs. Gao. Hearing that the carriages had really been taken and that everything was gone, the old lady was so furious that she fainted. "Mom!" The second son steadied the old lady and scolded Gao Mingquan. "Mingquan, you lost the carriages. Do as you see fit." Chapter 3770 Chapter 3770 Vomiting Blood 1 Chapter 3770 Vomiting Blood 1 Gao Mingquan cried out and spat out a mouthful of blood. Somehow, he found the strength to stand up. Sensing the change in Gao Mingquan's attitude, the second son felt intimidated. He glared at Gao Mingquan. "What now? I'm your second eldest brother. Are you going to defy me now?" Gao Mingquan stood there unsteadily and smirked at his second brother. The second son gave the oldest one a pleading look and tried to ask the latter for support. The eldest son stepped out and frowned. "Let's treat Mingquan's wounds first." "But where can we find the medicine?" The second son shook his head. The eldest son frowned. "We have to treat him even if I don't have any medicine. Here are my clothes. Tear it into strips and bandage Mingquan's wound." He then took off his top, tore it into pieces, and bandaged Gao Mingquan's wounds himself. Gao Mingquan was going to leave, but his brother stopped him. Moreover, he was too severely injured to leave, so he had to stay. "What are we going to do now?" Everyone turned to the eldest son for help. The eldest son frowned. "What do you think we should do?" The third son said, "No matter what, we have to get our luggage back. And the food and the carriages." His wife said, "That's right. It belongs to our family. We can't let them take those things away." The eldest son glanced at her. "Are you going to take it back yourself?" "Well," the fierce couple stopped talking altogether. "Well, we can let Mingjiang do that," the third daughter-in-law mumbled. "He was able to take our horses back from those people, and he can do the same now." "That's right. Let's go find Mingjiang." Old Mrs. Gao was furious. No! She had made it clear that she had fallen out with her unfilial fourth son. "Mom, are we going to starve to death just like that? Do you know how far we have to go?" Her three sons glared at her, and there was nothing she could do. Just like the old lady herself, those sons could be ruthless to their family members. "Where's your brother? Take us to him." Everyone looked at Gao Mingquan. Gao Mingquan knew that he had to go to Gao Mingjiang now. After all, they were all family. Seeing how miserable they were, his brother would probably give in. "I know where my brother is. I'll show you the way." Gao Mingquan's right arm was broken, but his legs were fine, so he could still walk. He led the team, and the others followed him. At first, they were all high-spirited and only wanted to catch up with Gao Mingjiang, so they ran as fast as they could. But they were lazy people in nature. As they grew tired, their high spirits soon faded. They had been traveling in carriages the whole time and had never needed to walk on their own. "I'm starving, I'm so thirsty. I'm so tired." Many of them were frustrated. Before long, the third daughter-in-law couldn't take it anymore. She sat down on the ground and said, "I'm not taking one more step. I'll die if I keep going." As soon as she sat down, the others sat down as well and didn't want to move. Chapter 3771 Chapter 3771 Vomit Blood 2. Chapter 3771 Vomit Blood 2. As soon as the third daughter-in-law sat down, the others sat down as well and wouldn't move a muscle. They were in a sorry state. They were covered in sweat, and they were hot, thirsty, and exhausted. I can't walk any more. I can't feel my legs. My carriage. The third daughter-in-law started crying. Her second sister-in-law looked exhausted as well. Seeing this, she couldn't help but ask, "Our carriages have been fine this whole time. Why was it stolen last night?" The third daughter-in-law said, "It's all because Mingjiang is gone. If he's here, these thieves won't dare to pick on us." Her second sister-in-law nodded. "It's all Mingjiang's fault." However, before she could finish, the third daughter-in-law asked, "What did you say?" Her second daughter-in-law said, "Am I wrong? It's all Mingjiang's fault. He left us behind." It was already evening, and they had been walking for most of the day without any food or water. They were all exhausted. However, the third daughter-in-law suddenly jumped up and slapped her sister-in-law. There was a crisp smack. The second daughter-in-law was dumbfounded. "You!" The third daughter-in-law said, "You've reminded me. Why did Mingjiang leave? It was all because of you. If it hadn't been for what happened earlier, would his family have left?" The second daughter-in-law felt a little guilty. "What are you talking about? What did I do? I only tried to borrow the duvet. What did I do? Borrow a duvet? You were fine when there was no duvet around. Why did you have to borrow one now? You make it sound like you've never tried to take things from Mingjiang before. You took advantage of them just the same. Not only won't you admit your mistake, but you're also blaming me. Wang Suehua, I'm going to make you pay. Wu Saimiao, I'm not afraid of you. Ah! The two of them ran into each other and started tearing each other's hair. It was a fierce fight. The two of them used to be on friendly terms because they had worked together to set up Li, their common enemy. However, now that Li was gone, the two of them started fighting. "Stop it! Aren't we having enough trouble already? Stop it!" The eldest daughter-in-law was speechless. She didn't know what to do because no matter which one she tried to stop, it would be like she was siding with someone. "Mother, aren't you going to do something about it?" She turned to the old lady for help. The old lady had a cold look in her eyes, and no one knew what she was thinking. As for her sons, they had all gone out to look for food, saying that they were going hunting. No one knew when they would be back. The two daughters-in-law were finally tired. They lay on the ground and gasped for air. No one made a sound, and no one knew what the others were thinking. The first day, they survived the cold and starvation. The second day, they woke up from their despair and resumed their journey. But they still couldn't find Gao Mingjiang's family. They were so hungry that they couldn't see straight. If only Mingjiang was here. If Mingjiang were here, we wouldn't be like this. If it hadn't been for brother Mingjiang, we would have been in this state 2 days after we set out, Gao Mingkuan said indifferently. No one said a word. Brother Mingjiang saved our lives. You knew that, but you just wouldn't admit. Chapter 3772, Chapter 3772, Plague 1. Chapter 3772, Plague 1. Gao Mingkuan glared at them. You just won't admit it. You've been giving him a hard time, bullying him, and stealing from his family. If I were my brother, I would have abandoned you already. I wouldn't have waited until now. Before, none of the others would admit that. But now, without Gao Mingjing, they were all starving. Their legs were unsteady, and they were so thirsty that they thought their mouths were on fire. All they wanted to do was cry. The third son said, "But where is Mingjing? Where is my brother?" The second son said, "If we find Mingjing, I won't take advantage of him anymore." The others nodded as well and pleaded, "Where is Mingjing? I know we deserve this, but he has abandoned our mother as well." Gao Mingkuan said indifferently, "Who knows? I didn't catch up with him either." Hearing that, the others lost all hope. They hadn't eaten anything in 3 days. When they were hungry, they would eat the grass on the ground, but the grass was dry, and they spat it out as soon as it hit their mouth. "Look, there's a rat!" The third son suddenly shouted and dashed off. There was indeed a rat a short distance away, but it was obviously dead and already stank. But for the sake of a dead rat, the brothers almost tried to kill one another. Old Mrs. Gao sat on the ground and cried, but there was nothing she could do. "Let's make some soup for everyone with this rat." They carried the pot with them earlier, so it wasn't stolen with the carriage. Gao Mingkuan frowned. "No, it's a dead rat. You can't eat it. You'll get sick." However, the people of the Gao family were so hungry that they couldn't see straight. They didn't care if they would get sick. If they didn't eat, they would die. Hence, the dead rat was thrown into a pot, and everyone drooled over it. Gao Mingkuan couldn't let that happen. Hence, when no one was looking, he kicked the pot and spilled the soup. "Arg! My rat meat!" The Gao family was furious and tried to take the rat meat. However, Gao Mingkuan picked up the rat and ran as fast as he could. He then tossed the rat into a creek in the distance. The Gao family was so hungry that they couldn't run as fast as Gao Mingkuan. It took them a while to catch up with him. "Where's my rat? Where is it?" They surrounded Gao Mingkuan and were worried sick. Gao Mingkuan pointed into the distance. There! A dead rat was indeed lying in a creek a short distance away. It was a dead rat with a tempting smell, but the creek was deep in the valley, so they couldn't go down. "Arg!" The third son, who was starving, smacked Gao Mingkuan on the head. "Why did you do that? I'm going to kill you. That's our life-saving meat. How could you throw it away? Gao Mingkuan, I hate you so much. Why can't you be dead? You're going to get us all killed." Everyone was blaming Gao Mingkuan, including old Mrs. Gao, who was hitting him with the pot. Gao Mingkuan said stubbornly, "It's a dead rat. You can't eat it. It'll kill you." "Who told you that?" Just then. Chapter 3773 Chapter 3773, Plague 2. Chapter 3773, Plague 2. Just then, 2 people showed up at the foot of the mountain. Both of them wore tattered clothes and looked as filthy as beggars. They found the dead rat. The 2 of them were over the moon and immediately picked it up. They divided the meat into 2 halves and stuffed it into their mouth. The Gao family was so jealous. The eldest son glared at Gao Mingkuan. "Look, someone has eaten rat meat. Why can't we eat it?" "That's right. We've been starved for days. What's wrong with eating some rat meat? Gao Mingkuan, are you trying to starve us to death? Fine, we won't eat rat meat, but you have to make us something to eat." Gao Mingkuan blushed and wanted to retort, but he couldn't. He only mumbled, "You can't eat it. You just can't." "Who told you that?" "I heard Miss Feng talking about it with Brother Mingjiang," said Gao Mingkuan. "It's that Feng girl again." The third daughter-in-law flared up at the mention of that name. "She's such a troublemaker. If it hadn't been for her, Li would never have been so stubborn. Mingjiang would never have fallen out with us because of his wife's pillow talk. It's all Feng's fault." Gao Mingkuan glanced at her. "Sister-in-law, you still haven't realized your mistake, and you're still blaming other people. I don't think anyone will help you when you starve to death." His sister-in-law stared at him. "What did you say?" Since Gao Mingkuan had made it so clear, he couldn't say anything else. He only smirked and said, "You can savor what I said." After that, Gao Mingkuan sat down on the side and didn't say another word. The Gao family didn't find any dead rats anymore because even those were in high demand. They couldn't just find them everywhere. They had to dig up wild grass and vegetables, as well as white clay, to keep themselves alive. "Come, let's go find Mingjiang. We'll only survive if we find him." They struggled to their feet and stumbled forward, shouting Mingjiang all the way. Occasionally, carriages or ox carts would pass them and keep moving forward. Old Mrs. Gao burst into tears of jealousy. They used to have carriages as well, and Mingjiang had found them. As for the rest of her sons had been too busy taking care of their own families to care about her. Old Mrs. Gao missed Gao Mingjiang even more. She even saw that her sons all ate some wild fruit on their own without leaving anything for her. That wasn't what Mingjiang was like back then. She would have starved to death if it hadn't been for Gao Mingkuan's help every now and then. In the most difficult situation, they finally realized how good it was to have Gao Mingjiang around. If we find Mingjiang, I won't pick on him again. Actually, Feng is a nice girl. She's very lucky and knows how to pick up things. Not only that, but she also knows how to hunt. She has hunted rabbits before. It's been a while since I ate meat. My stomach. We don't even have any chaff, let alone meat. Seeing that they had finally changed their attitudes, Gao Mingkuan went up to old Mrs. Gao said casually, "Mum, I think I saw brother Mingjiang." "What?" The old lady was shocked. Chapter 3774 Chapter 3774 Meet Up 1 Chapter 3774 Meet Up 1 What? The other members of the Gao family were thrilled to hear that. "Where is he? Just tell us where he is. Say it." They were already exhausted, but after hearing what Gao Mingkuan said, they were all excited and almost jumped to their feet. Everyone stared at Gao Mingkuan with eager eyes. Gao Mingkuan cleared his throat. "If you can change your attitude, I'll take you to my brother. If you still behave like before, even if you can find him." The third son immediately said, "I understand. If we're still as greedy, hypocritical, and selfish as before, even if we find him, he'll still abandon us." Gao Mingkuan thought, "So, you know how greedy, hypocritical, and selfish you were." He looked at the others. The exhaustion and starvation had worn them out. They would agree to everything. The third daughter-in-law said, "I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have bullied Mingjiang's family. They had been helping us all along, but I'm sorry." The others apologized as well and asked Gao Mingkuan to tell them where Gao Mingjiang was. They had made up their minds. They would never let Gao Mingjiang leave when they found him again. Gao Mingkuan glanced at his mother, who was the most stubborn one. She had always wanted to share wealth with her family because they were all her sons. Since Gao Mingjiang was doing better than his brothers, she wanted to share some of his wealth with her other brothers. Old Mrs. Gao glared at Gao Mingkuan. "Why are you looking at me? Am I that kind of old lady who can't tell right from wrong?" Gao Mingkuan thought, "You really are that kind of a person." The old lady knew by now that Gao Mingjiang was the only one she could count on, so she snorted. "After we find Mingjiang, I'll let you live separately. I'll stay with Mingjiang's family. As for the others, it's none of my business." "Mum," the other sons panicked. Just then, the eldest daughter-in-law tugged at her husband's sleeve and whispered, "Our top priority now is to find Mingjiang. We'll talk about the rest later." Her husband, "Mom, you can do whatever you want after we find Mingjiang. You'll call the shots." The eldest son turned to Gao Mingkuan. "Can you tell me where Mingjiang is now?" Where was Gao Mingjiang? Led by Feng Wu, the fourth branch was living in a treehouse in the woods. On her way here, Feng Wu noticed that someone had set up an inescapable trap to catch her. If she had set out on her own or revealed a little spiritual essence, they would have caught her by now. Luckily, she was with the team and was still safe. As for the Gao family, Feng Wu looked at Gao Mingjiang and knew that he wouldn't stop caring about them. Before he left with his family, he was more aggrieved than angry. After everything he had put in, his mother was still biased, and his brothers were still picking on him. No one could stand that, but when he calmed down again, he was a little worried. What do you think will happen to them? Under the treehouse, Gao Mingjiang was making charcoal according to Feng Wu's instructions, while Li was busy making bacon. Chapter 3775 Chapter 3775 Meet Up 2 Chapter 3775 Meet Up 2 Li glanced at Gao Mingjiang and asked indifferently, "What do you think they'll?" Gao Mingjiang asked, "Mingkuan is with them. I think they'll be all right." Despite that, he still climbed up the tree again. It had been so long, but they still hadn't arrived. They only traveled for 2 days before taking camp here, and they had only covered about 50 kilometers. It had been 3 to 5 days since he left the others. Where were they? Could something have gone wrong? Gao Mingjiang frowned. Li heaved a long sigh. "I knew it. You're not heartless. You still care about them." Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly. "After all, they're my mother and brothers. Even if they're unkind to me, I can't just ignore them." Li said, "That's why we've been waiting here. We're only 2 days' ride from them. Without you, they'll have a hard time. That way, they won't be so unreasonable when we meet again." Gao Mingjiang said, "I thought the same. I've told Mingkuan how to get here. He should have brought them here already." The two of them were perplexed, but Feng Wu knew the answer. Little Phoenix had snuck out and told Feng Wu what happened in the Gao family. Feng Wu was dumbfounded. The carriages were stolen, the luggage was taken, and there was no food. With a whole family of lazy people, it was so frustrating just to think about it. However, the Gao family would never forget this lesson. Feng Wu didn't care if the Gao family traveled with them. In terms of living comfortably, it would be best if the Gao family weren't around. However, to stay safe, the more people there were, the less likely Feng Wu would be spotted. Therefore, she didn't mind having the Gao family with them. Therefore, when Gao Mingjiang turned to Feng Wu for help, Feng Wu said indifferently, "Don't worry. They'll be here soon." After some thought, Feng Wu said, "Make some porridge. I don't think they'll have the stomach for pancakes." Gao Mingjiang and Li nodded. Feng Wu's capability in the past few days was enough to impress them and make them follow her orders. In the past few days, Feng Wu had gone hunting, made charcoal, and found a place for the cabin. Her ability to survive in the wild was unmatched. Feng Wu had hunted countless animals and even caught a boar. The whole family was over the moon. Normal people wouldn't dare to go into the woods. Even Gao Mingjiang wouldn't survive. However, Feng Wu went in and came back with a pile of games. However, Feng Wu still reminded him to give all the credit to Gao Mingjiang, and she only wanted to be an inconspicuous nobody. Li had cleaned up the wild boar and turned it into dried meat. She then put each piece in a sack so that they could take a bite when they were hungry. It was getting cold, so the meat could last for a long time. Meanwhile, the Gao family was 5 kilometers away and was at a loss. They were dumbfounded when they saw the dead bodies on the ground. The dead bodies were obviously rotten and gave off a foul smell. Just then, 2 people staggered out. Their faces were scarlet red and they couldn't stop shaking. Chapter 3776 Chapter 3776 Contagious 1 Chapter 3776 Contagious 1 The third daughter-in-law of the Gao family cried out, "Why do these 2 people look so familiar?" Her husband said grumpily, "Of course they do. They're the 2 people that took the rat meat." Everyone took a look and saw that it was true. "What's wrong with them?" the third daughter-in-law cried out. "Why do they look sick? And they're coming our way. What do they want?" Wrapped in thin, worn cotton, the 2 men were stumbling toward the Gao family as if they were going to fall at any moment. "Please give us something to eat. Seeing how pitiful they were, the eldest daughter-in-law felt sorry for them. She took a vegetable pancake out of her chest pocket and was about to hand it to them when Gao Mingkuan cried out, "Don't touch them." The eldest daughter-in-law glared at Gao Mingkuan. Mingquan, you're so mean. He's. However, Gao Mingquan cut her off. Fall back. Everyone, fall back. He's been infected by the plague. Don't let him touch you. The plague? How was that possible? However, before they realized what was going on, the person who had been stumbling around suddenly found the strength to throw himself at them. He wrapped his arms around the eldest daughter-in-law's thigh. Ah! She screamed. Gao Mingquan and the eldest son tried their best to help her. But that person wouldn't let go. Ouch! Not only did he hold her thigh, but he also bit down, and blood gushed out. Arg! The eldest daughter-in-law panicked. She could still hear Gao Mingquan's voice in her head. Plague, plague, plague. She was so frightened that she fainted. Gao Mingquan took out a rod and smashed it down on the head of the man holding the eldest daughter-in-law's thigh. The man swayed and finally let go. The eldest son quickly dragged his wife to the side. Upon closer inspection, he saw that there was a row of tooth marks on her ankle, and blood was oozing out. And it was black blood. What kind of toxin was that? Seeing that his friend had been killed, the other man spat at the Gao family. I'm going to infect you. Caught off guard, the women of the Gao family were spat all over their faces. Gao Mingquan had been chasing the man, but because of his injury, it wasn't easy to catch up with him. Moreover, this person had some martial arts skills, which made it even harder for Gao Mingquan to hit him. Gao Mingquan shouted at his brothers, "What are you waiting for? Standing around won't stop him. Fight him if you want to protect your wives and children." The Gao brothers were indeed very timid and didn't dare to go near the infected person. However, Gao Mingquan was right. If they didn't join the battle, none of their wives or children would be safe. Hence, all four sons joined hands and finally defeated the man. However, my face. My hand. Does he really have the plague? What are we going to do? Mom, is the plague really that bad? The others asked old Mrs. Gao, the oldest of them all. Old Mrs. Gao had been through a lot. She had heard about the plague before. Chapter 3777 Chapter 3777 Contagious 2 Chapter 3777 Contagious 2 Old Mrs. Gao's face was ghastly pale. She didn't want to believe it. That's impossible. How can they have the plague? That's impossible. That's not true. She shook her head. But, Mom, Gao Mingquan wanted to say something, but the old lady cut him off. No one is allowed to talk about it. And you? She glared at Gao Mingquan. Don't tell Mingjiang anything after we find him. Gao Mingquan said, Mom, if that's the case, we won't be able to find brother Mingjiang. You! Old Mrs. Gao hit him with her stick. But Gao Mingquan remained unperturbed. Mother, if that's the case, I won't take you to him. The old lady knew that if Gao Mingquan didn't show them the way, they would never be able to find Gao Mingjiang. Are you going to watch your brothers die? The old lady was so angry that she was almost in tears. Gao Mingquan looked from the sorry state of the Gao family to the old lady without saying a word. The old lady told Gao Mingquan to lead the way, but he shook his head and refused. The old lady was furious. The eldest son glared at Gao Mingquan. We don't have to go, but you need to talk to Mingjiang. If he agrees to take us in, I'll listen to him for the rest of my life. The other two sons also looked solemnly at Gao Mingquan, indicating that they would do the same. Gao Mingquan frowned. It's very likely that we've been infected. If we get in touch with brother Mingjiang now, we may infect him and his family. So, I'm not going. Old Mrs. Gao had no choice but to compromise. Go ask him on your own. If he wants to come, that's all the better. If he doesn't want to come, we'll leave him to his fate. Gao Mingquan looked at the others. There was hope, sadness, and regret in their eyes. Right now, they were probably all regretting parting with Gao Mingjiang's family. If they didn't go through this, they would never repent. At that thought, Gao Mingkuan rose to its feet. All right. I'll go find my brother. You guys wait for us in the valley. As for these two people, set them on fire before. It was very likely that they had contracted the plague. The eldest son nodded. Off you go. We'll do it. Gao Mingkuan quickly left. Old Mrs. Gao looked at her eldest son, dropping hints. Boss Gao smiled bitterly. Mum, it won't make any difference even if we follow Mingkuan. If Mingjiang really doesn't want to come, what can we do? Old Mrs. Gao burst into tears and was filled with despair. As a matter of fact, she knew better than anyone else that those two people had to have the plague. When she was little, there was a plague in the village once, and more than 70% of the population died. Why are we so unlucky, old Mrs. Gao burst into tears. The third daughter-in-law said, if we hadn't chased them away, we wouldn't have been reduced to this state. The second daughter-in-law said, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have tried to take advantage of them. I thought we were all family, so what if he lost a little? He was forced to leave. It's all my fault. Chapter 3778 Chapter 3778 Found Him 1. Chapter 3778 Found Him 1. Because Gao Mingkuan already knew where his brother was, and they weren't too far apart, he soon found the latter. Brother Mingjiang. Standing some distance away, Gao Mingkuan looked up and shouted at a cabin. The family had been building a cabin when he last saw Gao Mingkuan. It was finished and was buried in the thick growth of leaves. Neither the sun nor the rain could touch it, and it was indeed very comfortable. Feng Wu knew that Gao Mingkuan was here when she heard his footsteps, but she didn't move. Right now, she was recuperating, for she knew that the journey to the northern Yan kingdom would only get more dangerous. Hearing his brother's voice, Gao Mingjiang jumped off the treehouse. Mingkuan. Gao Mingjiang sounded both excited and anxious. After all, they were family, and Gao Mingjiang had no intention of abandoning them. He had done that because he wanted the old lady and the others to know how difficult it was to survive on their own so that they wouldn't make trouble for him in the future. It had been a few days, and he wondered how they were doing. Gao Mingkuan didn't go any closer but stood some distance away. Gao Mingjiang ran as fast as he could, but Gao Mingkuan waved him off. Brother, stay away from me. Mingkuan, what's wrong? What happened? Gao Mingjiang panicked when he saw his younger brother, who was covered in wounds, had a bruised face, and was limping. Stay away from me. I may have caught the plague. Seeing that Gao Mingjiang was coming, Gao Mingkuan stumbled back. The plague? Gao Mingjiang frowned and asked anxiously, What's going on? Is the situation out there so bad already? Gao Mingkuan didn't waste any time. He quickly told his brother what happened. Li and her children stood by Gao Mingjiang's side and were dumbfounded. Someone has taken the carriages. And all the food. And the luggage too. How did that happen? Gao Mingjiang and Li looked at each other in bewilderment. When they heard that the others were fighting over the dead rat, Gao Mingjiang's family was in tears. It was all my fault. I shouldn't have. Gao Mingjiang's eyes were filled with tears. Li took Gao Mingjiang's arm. No, it's all my fault. I was narrow-minded. That's why. Seeing that Gao Mingjiang and his wife were blaming themselves, Gao Mingkuan said bitterly, Brother, that's what we're facing now. What do you think we should do? Gao Mingjiang said, I'll go with you. Li said, I'll go with you too. But Gao Mingjiang shook his head and said affirmatively, No, what if you and the kids catch the plague? I can't let that happen. Li looked at Gao Mingjiang with teary eyes. But if you're killed, how am I supposed to live? Gao Mingjiang tried to appease her. What if it's not the plague? Don't worry. Even if it is, I'm healthy enough to pull through. My mom has given you and the kids a hard time, and you're too weak to survive it. He was going to follow Gao Mingkuan after that. Just then, Feng Wu sighed. It's a mess out there. Why don't we let them come here? Chapter 3779 Chapter 3779 Found him, too. Chapter 3779 Found him, too. As for whether or not it was the plague, Feng Wu could tell right away. Only then did Gao Mingjiang remember that he had a genius doctor with him. Gao Mingjiang finally knew how capable the girl was. But Gao Mingkuan didn't know that, so he frowned. What if this place is infected? Hearing Feng Wu's words, Gao Mingjiang was relieved. Great. We'll bring them here. After that, Gao Mingjiang left with his brother. Gao Mingkuan was still worried. After walking for a while, he frowned and asked, Brother, are we really going to take them back? What if? Gao Mingjiang waved him off. Don't worry. With what Feng said, you can rest assured. Gao Mingkuan smiled bitterly. The plague could wipe out an entire city. The plague should have come from Maple Leaf City. Gao Mingkuan looked at Gao Mingjiang in concern. If Northern Yen knows about it, will they still let us? Gao Mingjiang was baffled for a moment before he realized the same thing. If Northern Yen knew about this, the city gate would be closed, and no one would be allowed inside. Let's go! At that thought, Gao Mingjiang quickened his pace. Take my mother and the others to the treehouse. Treat them if they're sick. If they're not, we should be on our way. If we're late, it'll be like you said. We'll be locked out of the city. The two brothers took the carriage, so they moved very fast. It only took them 15 minutes to get there. The Gao family almost lost their minds when they saw the carriage. Old Mrs. Gao, who had been lying down, almost jumped to her feet. It's him. He's here. The Gao family rushed forward in excitement, except for the eldest daughter-in-law, who couldn't move. Gao Mingjiang drove the carriage closer, jumped off, and walked up to the old lady. Mother! Something seemed to occur to old Mrs. Gao, and she stumbled back. Mingjiang, back off! Quickly! You'll catch it! Gao Mingjiang was touched. Before, his mother wouldn't have stayed away from him but forced him to save her brothers. Mum, Xiao Wu has told me everything on the way. It's an emergency. Let's go back to the woods first. After that, Gao Mingjiang tried to help her into the carriage. But the old lady still struggled. Does your wife know you're out here like this? Isn't she mad at you? This is such a nice carriage. What if you catch the plague? Only after losing the carriages then did she realize how precious a carriage was. She would rather die than lose it again. Gao Mingjiang smiled bitterly. A carriage isn't as important as a human life. We don't have enough space. If you're too weak to walk, get in. If you can walk, just tag along. We're running out of time. The second and third daughters-in-law looked at each other and both saw guilt in each other's eyes. Mingjiang. As soon as they started talking, Gao Mingjiang waved them off. Guys, we'll talk about it later. His sisters-in-law nodded. Although they didn't say anything, they were very touched. If they were in Gao Mingjiang's place, would they come back to save the others when they knew that they might be infected by the plague? Where's my eldest sister-in-law? Gao Mingjiang realized that someone was missing. Chapter 3780 Chapter 3780 Rescue. Chapter 3780 Rescue. Where's my eldest sister-in-law? Gao Mingjiang realized that someone was missing. The eldest son immediately said, She's here. Your sister-in-law was trying to give someone some food, but that person bit her. She was worried that she might catch the plague, so she wrapped herself up like this. Seeing his sister-in-law bundled up in the carriage, Gao Mingjiang rubbed his forehead. Feng Wu arrived at that moment and was rendered speechless by what she saw. Feng Wu didn't want to attract too much attention, so she checked the eldest daughter-in-law's pulse when she was helping her to her feet. Judging by her pulse, it really was the plague. Feng Wu looked at the crowd. She knew that if she stayed here with them, she could be stopped outside the city wall. However, she knew that she had to save these people. Right at that moment, there was a loud bang in the sky. It was so loud that the mountains and rivers seemed to shake. It was as if an earthquake had taken place. What happened? What happened? Members of the Gao family were shocked. They were bewildered and flustered. They were so exhausted that they couldn't take much more. But now, large chunks of rock rolled down the slope. They were on a gentle slope at the bottom of the hill and would be easily affected. Boom! There was another loud noise which made them uneasy. Is there an earthquake? Have we run into one? After finally finding Gao Mingjiang, the old lady and the others were still eating porridge. Although they were unsteady on their feet, they still held their bowls so that they wouldn't break them. Gao Mingjiang jumped onto a tree and looked into the distance. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was talking to Little Phoenix. Capable cultivators are fighting. Little Phoenix was pleasantly surprised. I think it's Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu was ecstatic. Jun Linyuan? Was he here? Standing on top of a tree, Feng Wu couldn't see clearly because of the shaking ground. Even so, she could still see two black dots fighting in the distance. At the top of the mountain. That was right. It really was Jun Linyuan. He really was here. However, Feng Wu recalled that a lot of people were after her. There were the Northern Yan Kingdom, the Dongsang Kingdom, and the Tunwu Emnire. Feng Wu had no idea why she was in such a miserable state, but it was reality. Who's the one fighting Jun Linyuan? Feng Wu asked. Little Phoenix shook its head. I don't know, but it's a quite capable person. Feng Wu couldn't agree more. Jun Linyuan was already very capable, and even General Xuezhi of the Dongsang Kingdom wasn't his match. The fact that Jun Linyuan was able to fight him to a standstill showed how capable the other person was. Shit! Little Phoenix cried out. Even if Little Phoenix didn't cry out, Feng Wu could still see it. She saw a person flying toward Jun Linyuan's battlefield and joined hands with the first one to fight Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu said, "How can they do that?" Jun Linyuan was supposed to be on par with the first person, but with the addition of another capable cultivator, Jun Linyuan was in grave danger. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and clenched her fists. Chapter 3781 Chapter 3781 Jun Linyuan. Chapter 3781 Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu narrowed her eyes and clenched her fist. Just then, Gao Mingjiang raised his voice. Feng Wu knew what he said. He told her to come back as soon as possible. But Feng Wu didn't want to. Was right here, and he had to be here for her. How could she walk away from him? Right now, Feng Wu regretted the fact that she barely had any cultivation ability left. Even so, Feng Wu still ran toward the top of the mountain. Her action frightened the others. Gao Mingjiang stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. She was gone. Not only wouldn't she back off, but she was also charging forward. Little Feng, come back here. Exasperated, Gao Mingjiang tried to drag Feng Wu back, but Feng Wu was too fast. She ran through the woods like a cheetah and was soon out of sight among the thick leaves. Only then did Li realize what had happened. She rushed over and asked, "Where's Feng?" After interacting with Feng Wu for the past few days, Li genuinely considered Feng Wu to be her niece. She was worried sick when Feng Wu went missing. Gao Mingjiang frowned. She's gone in. Li was so anxious that she burst into tears. Why? Ah, where's Xiaoshu? Li said anxiously, Xiaoshu is missing. When did he run off? Sonia, where's your brother? Sonia sounded like she was going to cry. He said he was going to fetch some firewood when we heard my grandmother and the others were coming. There was no firewood, so I told him to wait for me. I would go with him after I relieved myself, but he was gone in a moment. Li said, Little Feng must have found out that Xiaoshu was missing and went to look for her. My heart! The thought of her 2 children in danger almost gave her a heart attack. She wanted to run into the woods as fast as she could. You can't go. Gao Mingjiang stopped Li and gave the job to Gao Mingkuan. Stop your sister-in-law. After that, Gao Mingjiang was going to rush into the woods to save the 2 kids. Seeing this, the other 3 brothers of the Gao family realized that they couldn't let Gao Mingjiang leave. They dropped what they were eating and rushed over to stop him. Mingjiang, don't. Calm down. Calm down? He's my son. Gao Mingjiang threw off his 3 brothers' hands. The next moment, Gao Mingjiang charged into the woods like an angry bear. Take care of my sister-in-law and the girl. I'll go find my brother. Gao Mingkuan dashed off as well. Soon, Gao Mingkuan was gone as well. The 3 brothers looked at one another in bewilderment. Why did it happen so suddenly? The old lady was much calmer. She had a bowl of porridge and a piece of sweet potato. She had recovered a little and could speak again. Cut the crap. Let's get out of here and find a safer spot. Otherwise, we're going to die here. Meanwhile, Feng Wu ran in the direction of the battle after she ran into the woods. Little Phoenix's voice kept ringing in her ears. You're out of your mind. Don't you know how weak you are now? Don't you know what level they are? Compared to them, you're as weak as an ant. How are you going to help anyone? You're going to get yourself killed. But nothing Little Phoenix said could stop Feng Wu. He's here for me, and you want me to abandon him? The more anxious Feng Wu was, the calmer her voice became. Chapter 3782 Chapter 3782 Battle on the Mountaintop. Chapter 3782 Battle on the Mountaintop. It was a fierce battle. Right now, Feng Wu couldn't get closer. Gravel kept rolling down the slope, and Feng Wu couldn't even stand still, let alone go up. Fly me there, Feng Wu told Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix frowned and looked troubled. Your current cultivation level. They were still talking when they heard a smirk. Patriarch Zhuo? Jun Lin Yuan's voice rang out. The Zhuo family? The Patriarch. Feng Wu remembered that the old master of the Zhuo family had been killed by Jun Lin Yuan when he was in the imperial capital. So, was this one the legendary Patriarch? The old man removed the cloth covering his face and revealed his face. That's right. The old man stared at Jun Lin Yuan with an indecipherable look in his eyes. You're not dead. Jun Lin Yuan frowned and looked confused. The old man smirked. How can I die when the Junwu Empire has a talented young man like you? It was a creepy smile. That old monster isn't dead, is he? Patriarch Zhuo smiled at the other man. It was a swordsman. He wore a bamboo hat, straw shoes, and a vine sword basket on his waist. Despite his simple appearance, he was very powerful. The middle-aged swordsman was the one who had fought Jun Lin Yuan to a draw. Patriarch Zhuo glanced at him. Gui Tsulai, after all these years, you're still dressed like this. Gui Tsulai glanced at the Patriarch with an emotionless face. He pointed his sword at Jun Lin Yuan. Make your move. Jun Lin Yuan shook his head. You're not as good as me. Gui Tsulai was furious, but he still pointed his sword at Jun Lin Yuan. Strike! He had drawn out his sword, but he hadn't forced Jun Lin Yuan to draw out his. Patriarch Zhuo was on the side, ready to join the battle at any moment. Gui Tsulai glanced at the old man. Go away. Patriarch Zhuo wouldn't have it. Why? I'll just stand here and watch. I won't interfere. After that, he crossed his arms and leaned back on the wall. But they both knew that the Patriarch was only taking advantage of the situation. Gui Tsulai glanced at Patriarch Zhuo and asked Jun Lin Yuan, Shall we have the competition in a month at Norland? Norland was the capital of northern Yen. Jun Lin Yuan nodded indifferently. Sure. Gui Tsulai frowned, glanced at the old man, and left. He came and went without a trace. Once Gui Tsulai was gone, patriarchs will look displeased. It was obvious that Guizulai didn't want to see him here, so he had left. He had even made an appointment to fight Jun Linyuan at the top of Norland. Jun Linyuan glanced at the old man. Are you going to fight me? Jun Linyuan wouldn't be intimidated if the two of them joined hands, not to mention that there was only one of them left. The old man smirked. Let's fight. Feng Wu heard those last words when Little Phoenix carried her up the mountain. The battle at the top of Norland, and Jun Linyuan and Patriarchs Wo were flying away. Feng Wu said, They're gone? Just like that? The ground was covered with broken rocks, withered green plants, and they were disappearing into the distance. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. Jun Linyuan was right in front of her, and he was gone before she could say a word to him. She wondered how the battle would turn out. Chapter 3783 Chapter 3783 Guizulai. Chapter 3783 Guizulai. Feng Wu looked eagerly at Little Phoenix. But now the bird shook its head. No! It knew what Feng Wu meant. She wanted to go to Jun Linyuan, but that couldn't happen. Little Phoenix tried to persuade Feng Wu. All of Jun Linyuan's enemies are spiritual saints, and they can easily crush you. Apart from becoming his burden, there's nothing else you can do. You heard it yourself. The Battle of the Top of Norland is going to take place a month from now. Jun Linyuan is going to fight Guizulai. Do you know who Guizulai is? He's Master Juesha, one of the 4 kings of Northern Yin. He's known for his sword, Strike One. Do you know why his sword is called that name? Because he never makes a second strike. There's also the Zhuo family's patriarch and other people hiding in the dark. Even if we can catch up with Jun Linyuan and find him, do you know how much pressure you'll put on Jun Linyuan just by showing up? You have the divine phoenix blood, and Jun Linyuan has the dragon phoenix blood. If the two of you really become a couple, what will it mean? Other forces won't stand by and do nothing. Xiao Wu. And you have to go to Norland because you'll find something you really need there. Little Phoenix finally told the truth. Feng Wu frowned. Is that what Master Linghu was talking about? Little Phoenix nodded. Your master left it for you. You have to have it. Feng Wu nodded. She finally knew why Little Phoenix had led her to the Northern Yin Empire. So, although you didn't say it explicitly, you've been leading me to Norland, haven't you? Feng Wu glanced at the bird. Ahem. Little Phoenix pretended that it didn't understand and looked away. Feng Wu said grumpily, I knew it. You've recovered a lot of your memories from your previous life, but you wouldn't tell me. Little Phoenix sounded anxious. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but I can't. Feng Wu asked, why not? Little Phoenix stomped its foot. Well, I just can't tell you. Seeing that Little Phoenix was worried sick, Feng Wu let it go. So, it really couldn't tell Feng Wu, could it? Would it harm its own life if it did? Feng Wu gave Little Phoenix an excuse. I won't ask you, but you have to tell me everything in advance, Feng Wu warned the bird. Little Phoenix nodded immediately. Feng Wu mumbled, You're right. If I show up in front of Jun Linyuan now, I'll attract a lot of powerful enemies, and most of the capable cultivators of the Junwu Empire are fighting the Dongseng Kingdom. They won't have time to help us. Isn't the competition in a month? Let's go to see Jun Linyuan then. Moreover, she didn't know if Guizulai would try anything funny, so Feng Wu decided to check up on him in advance. At that thought, Feng Wu was filled with enthusiasm. She told Little Phoenix, Come, let's go to the Gao family. Little Phoenix looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Aren't you going alone? She looked up at the sky and saw that people were monitoring the ground every now and then. She could sense a pair of eyes staring at this area. It was as if they could see everything. Chapter 3784 Chapter 3784 Let's go back 1. Chapter 3784. Let's go back 1. Let's go. Feng Wu patted Little Phoenix. Only then did Little Phoenix let out a breath of relief. If Feng Wu insisted on going to Jun Linyuan, there was nothing it could do. Little Feng Wu and Little Phoenix quickly went down the mountain to find a boy crying on the ground. His face was covered with dirt, and Feng Wu almost couldn't recognize him. It was none other than Gao Xiaoshu, the son of Gao Mingjiang. Xiaoshu, what are you doing here? Feng Wu went up to him in a hurry, crouched down, and rubbed his head. It was obvious that the kid was frightened by what had happened. A stone had smashed into his head, creating a bloody gash. Feng Wu wanted to pick him up, but realized that one of his legs was pinned down by a stone. Feng Wu pushed the stone away and examined his right leg. His right leg was badly injured, but luckily she had discovered him in time. Otherwise, Feng Wu was worried that he would lose his leg. Sister, the boy looked excited. He buried his head in Feng Wu's arms and cried even harder. Feng Wu picked him up and asked, "Why are you here all by yourself? Where are your parents?" Gao Xiaoshu was too busy crying and hiccuping to speak. Before Feng Wu could ask another question, she saw two people a short distance away. One was Gao Mingjiang, and the other was Gao Mingkuan. With weapons in their hands and serious looks on their faces, they looked as if they weren't afraid of death at all. Rocks kept falling down as they wandered in the woods, and it was very dangerous. "Uncle Gao!" Feng Wu greeted him. Gao Mingjiang had lost all hope. Gao Xiaoshu had been lost in the woods, and Feng had rushed in to save him. No one knew if they were still alive. Judging by how dangerous the woods were, they probably weren't going to make it. Gao Mingjiang was getting more and more desperate when he heard a pleasant voice. He froze on the spot and didn't dare to move, fearing that he was hallucinating. Gao Mingkuan nudged him in excitement. "Brother Mingkuan, it's them. Look." Only then did Gao Mingjiang turn around, look at Feng Wu, and see the boy in her arms. "Xiaoshu!" Gao Mingjiang was so excited that he almost passed out. He charged at Feng Wu like a shooting arrow. You! Seeing that Gao Mingjiang was so excited that his lips were trembling, Feng Wu knew that he was losing control. She stuffed Gao Xiaoshu into his arms. Xiaoshu's foot was caught by a rock, and he needs immediate treatment. "It's too dangerous here. Let's get out first." Sure. Gao Mingjiang nodded at Feng Wu in excitement. "Little Feng, I can't thank you enough. If you need my help in the future, I'll do anything." Feng Wu nodded. "Let's go out first." On her way out, Feng Wu grabbed a few herbs. When they arrived at the campsite, they saw that they were confronting a group of people. The bandits that had taken their carriages were standing right in front of them. The leader of the bandits was Ding, and he was heading for northern Yen with over a dozen men. They had been traveling from the south to the north to run away from the plague. Captain Ding and the others knew that they would only survive if they went to northern Yen. They had used up a lot of things on their way here, but now, Chapter 3785. Chapter 3785. Let's go back to. Chapter 3785. Let's go back to. Just when they were running out of provisions, they saw someone they knew. The Gao family. They had a carriage with them. Not only was there a carriage, but there was also a lot of food. There was even meat. Ding and the others were thrilled. "You! Move everything into our carriage." Mo Ping, Ding's most trusted subordinate, stepped out before Ding could say anything. The Gao family was furious. Gao Mingjiang knew some martial arts, but he wasn't here. The remaining three sons were as weak as before. Seeing how scared the eldest son was, Mo Ping smirked. "What? Are you going to fight back now? Come and take these carriages. They used to belong to your family, don't they?" Those around him laughed after Mo Ping said that. The Gao brothers felt like they had been slapped. Infuriated, old Mrs. Gao couldn't take it anymore. She picked up the wok and slapped Mo Ping with it. With a thump, the old lady hit Mo Ping in the face. "You old hag! How dare you!" Mo Ping kicked the old lady away. "Mom! Mom!" Seeing that the old lady had closed her eyes, the others were worried sick. Just then, Mo Ping and the others started taking the food. With Feng Wu's help, Gao Mingjiang's family accumulated quite a lot of food. Not only are there steamed buns, but there's also dried meat. "Guys, you're going to be in for a treat." Ding gave Mo Ping an appreciative look. Because of Mo Ping's sharp eyes, he immediately spotted the food hidden behind the rock. Mo Ping's eyesight was unbelievable. Not only did he see food, but he also saw Li. Li's clothes were shabby as well, but she was pretty enough to catch Mo Ping's eye right away. Mo Ping glanced at Ding. Ding rubbed his chin. Mo Ping lowered his voice. "Boss, she's a nice-looking woman. She's like a ripe peach and she's so eye-catching. You can take her to bed at night and let her cook during the day." Ding nodded, liking the idea. Mo Ping stared at Li with his shifty eyes, and Li was terrified. The three brothers of the Gao family realized what was going on as well, and they pulled Li behind them. Mo Ping smirked. "Do you think you can protect her?" He then turned to Li. "If you come with us, we won't kill them. If you resist, we'll kill them all." Li was filled with despair. The other members of the Gao family lost all hope as well. If Li was taken away, Gao Mingjiang would go berserk when he came back. Hence, the eldest son glared at Mo Ping and gritted his teeth. "You can take the food and the carriage, but not her." Mo Ping smirked. "I'm not making a suggestion. We want food, carriages, and her." After that, he tried to drag Li away. The Gao brothers wouldn't let Li go. However, Mo Ping wasn't alone. He had over a dozen capable brothers with him. Right now, they had all gathered around the three brothers. "Gosh, I didn't know you could be so tough. You were so soft before." Chapter 3786, Chapter 3786. Suppression 1. Chapter 3786. Suppression 1. The three brothers weren't their match. They were bandits, and there were over a dozen of them. If the Gao brothers could defeat them, they wouldn't have lost the 2 carriages. Before long, the Gao brothers were lying on the ground with bruised faces. "Didn't I tell you to hand it over as soon as possible? Otherwise, you won't be able to handle the consequences. Why did you have to go through such pain?" Mo Ping glanced at the group of people in front of him with a taunting look on his face. He then grabbed Li with an evil smile. "Come with us." At that critical moment, Li suddenly slashed down at her throat with a dagger. Gao Mingjiang had given the dagger to her for self-defense. She knew that she would wish she were dead if she went with these people, so she might as well die now. She moved so fast that Mo Ping didn't have time to react. Before he realized it, the dagger had cut Li's neck. "How dare you!" Mo Ping grabbed Li's arm and broke it. Because Li had no experience when she tried to take her own life, she missed the artery when she cut her neck. At that critical moment, whoosh! An arrow flew out. It pierced Mo Ping's heart. Everyone was astonished and turned to look behind Li. Feng Wu had a bow in her hand and a cold look in her eyes. It was obvious that she was the one who had shot Mo Ping. "You!" Ding was so shocked that he couldn't utter a word. By then, Feng Wu had drawn her bow again. This time, her target was Ding. Feng Wu knew that if she could kill Ding, the team would collapse. Someone in the sky glanced in their direction. Because it was a battle between ordinary people with no spiritual essence, the eyes didn't pay much attention to it. Little Phoenix was relieved and told Feng Wu, "He's gone." Feng Wu nodded slightly. It seemed that she had made the right choice by blending into the crowd. Otherwise, she would have been spotted very easily. Whoosh! The arrow flew through the air and aimed at Ding's face. Ding tried to dodge, but for some unknown reason, he couldn't move a muscle. Whoosh! The arrow was buried in Ding's heart. Oh God! Everyone was dumbfounded. Old Mrs. Gao stared at Feng Wu in astonishment. All she knew was that the little beggar was lucky, but she didn't know that she could shoot so well. The other members of the Gao family were astonished as well. Let's go! Gao Mingjiang took out an axe from behind his back and struck down all the enemies. Gao Mingjiang had practiced martial arts before. When he saw that the Gao family was almost destroyed and that his wife had been humiliated, he was furious. He charged at the bandits with an axe in his hand. Naturally, the bandits wouldn't wait for Gao Mingjiang to kill them. They tried to fight back. But Feng Wu was there to help. Whoosh! Arrows just kept coming. Seeing that Feng Wu didn't have enough arrows, old Mrs. Gao rushed over and began to pull the arrows out of Ding's body. Blood gushed out. Chapter 3787 Chapter 3787 Suppression 2 Chapter 3787 Suppression 2 On any other day, old Mrs. Gao would have been scared out of her wits. However, she couldn't care less now. Seeing this, the wives of the second and third sons rushed over to pull out the arrows as well. Feng Wu was so accurate that she could kill an enemy with each arrow she shot. Right now, she was running out of arrows. As expected, when Feng Wu reached into the quiver on her back again, she found nothing. Over here! Holding the 3 arrows, old Mrs. Gao stumbled toward her. Poor old Mrs. Gao. She was still dizzy from Mo Ping's kick. She handed the arrows to Feng Wu and asked, "Will they work?" Seeing that the old Mrs. Gao was stumbling around, Feng Wu nodded solemnly. Yes. Good, good, old Mrs. Gao's voice was trembling. It was both from the pain and how nervous she felt. By then, Feng Wu had picked up the bloody arrows and went on shooting. Ding's men weren't stupid. They panicked when they saw that over a dozen of their men had been killed. It's you! Wang Yu stared at Feng Wu. 7 of the 10 dead bandits had been shot in the chest, 3 had been killed by Gao Mingjiang, and 7 were still alive. 3 of you, hold this man down. The rest, come with me and kill her. Wang Yu pointed at Feng Wu. We can still win if we kill that archer. Otherwise, she'll kill us all. The others saw it as well and all nodded. The next moment, they all charged at Feng Wu. Gao Mingkuan rushed over, tripped Wang Yu, and beat him up on the ground. The other 3 couldn't care less about Wang Yu and kept running. Feng Wu kept shooting as she fell back. Another person fell to the ground. However, the 2 men were only 10 meters away from her. Their faces twisted. Once that person was dead, the rest of the team would be defenseless. Hence, she had to die. Little Phoenix, who was in Feng Wu's arms, said in resignation, "Tell me about it. What kind of battle is this? They're all rolling around on the ground and beating each other up. A battle between ordinary people is so boring." Not only couldn't Feng Wu use her spiritual essence, but the bird also couldn't use it either. As soon as Little Phoenix flapped its wings, these people would be blown away. Feng Wu lowered her voice. "Don't do anything." Little Phoenix mumbled, "I know. There's a pair of eyes watching this land. I won't do anything." "Well, look, they just think you're too weak to fight in close combat and want to kill you." As a matter of fact, although Feng Wu had lost her spiritual essence, she was still physically strong enough to defeat an ordinary man with a single punch. By then, the 2 of them had reached Feng Wu. "Kill her!" Both men grinned maliciously. Just then, 2 people rushed over and held the 2 criminals in their arms. They were none other than the second and third sons of the Gao family. "Feng, do something!" the third son bellowed. Infuriated, the bandit tried to stab the third son in the back. Feng Wu frowned a little. She grabbed the bandit's saber and slit his throat. The bandit couldn't believe his eyes when he hit the ground. Chapter 3788, Chapter 3788, Treatment 1. Chapter 3788, Treatment 1. All the bandits were taken care of. Seeing this, old Mrs. Gao let out a breath of relief and almost fainted. All the members of the Gao family were injured or sick, and they looked miserable. The 3 eldest sons were all injured. The eldest daughter-in-law's condition was unclear. Gao Mingjiang was fine, but Li was still bleeding from the cut on her neck. Gao Mingkuan was covered with wounds, and so was old Mrs. Gao. The group of people consisted of the elderly and the sick. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. Little Feng, Gao Mingjiang gave Feng Wu a pleading look. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder and saw that the battle was over, and the rocks had stopped falling. She told Gao Mingjiang, "The slope is sheltered from the wind. Let's go there and treat your wounds. I'm going into the woods." Gao Mingjiang nodded immediately. Luckily, the bandits had left carriages behind, so Gao Mingjiang could take them there. As for where they were, it was too open for them to stay. "That Feng girl is amazing." After Feng Wu left, the Gao family began to discuss among themselves. The 3rd daughter-in-law said in disbelief, "Did you see her using the bow? She's amazing. She killed a person with each arrow." The 2nd daughter-in-law was still in shock. She had offended Feng Wu before. If the girl went berserk, no one in the Gao family would be her match. But what's she doing in the woods all by herself? Why hasn't she come back? Has she run away because of how burdened we are? The 2nd daughter-in-law shook her head at the 3rd daughter-in-law. "That's not what she's like." The 3rd daughter-in-law said, "Why not?" The 2nd daughter-in-law said, "If that's the case, she wouldn't have helped us. She would have left. With her capability, she can go anywhere she wants. Speaking of which, we've benefited a lot from her." The 3rd daughter-in-law wanted to retort, but when she recalled the way the girl shot the arrows, she realized that Feng Wu was indeed a good hunter. "But we're all injured. What are we going to do?" Even the men of the Gao family wanted to cry, let alone the women. Gao Mingjiang said, "We'll cook first, then treat the minor injuries. As for the more severe ones, we'll have to wait until Feng gets back." The other 4 sons all had superficial wounds, and Gao Mingjiang had brought some ointment with him, and it came in handy this time. Old Mrs. Gao was sitting there with her hands on her stomach, and crying out in pain. Sweat covered her forehead. "Mom, how do you feel?" The old lady waved her off. She now saw that out of all her sons, only the 4th was useful. She drew in her breath in pain and told Gao Mingjiang, "We'll set out as soon as Feng comes back." Gao Mingjiang said, "But I can't say for sure, but a lot of people behind us have caught the plague and are heading for northern Yen now. We have to leave before the city is sealed off." Only then did Gao Mingjiang remember that. "My eldest sister-in-law is old." Mrs. Gao looked at Zhao for a while before shaking her head. "I don't know. We'll have to let her stay behind." Gao Mingjiang said, "Mom." Old Mrs. Gao said coldly, "Of course we have to take care of healthy people first. If I'm the one infected, I'm going to stay behind as well. Those who are in good health, go to northern Yen now." Chapter 3789, Chapter 3789, Treatment 2. Chapter 3789, Treatment 2. At that point, she coughed violently. "Mother, you," Gao Mingjiang cried out. Old Mrs. Gao blanched. Was she really infected? If that was the case. Instantly, everyone in the Gao family froze on the spot with grim looks on their faces. Feng Wu came back at that moment. She came back with a broken pot she had found somewhere, and it was steaming. "Little Feng, you're finally back." Gao Mingjiang let out a breath of relief when he saw Feng Wu. "What's this?" Feng Wu said, "I picked some herbs. Since I had nothing better to do, I took some medicine." After that, Feng Wu poured the gravy into some boiled water, stirred it a little, and told Gao Mingjiang, Give everyone a bowl each. This medicine. Feng Wu looked at him in bewilderment. Didn't I tell you before? It specializes in treating the rat plague. It can treat the sick and prevent infection if there's nothing wrong. Gao Mingjiang was worried about the plague, but Feng Wu told him that it was solved. But the other members of the Gao family didn't believe her. The plague was going to kill them, and there was no such thing as a special potion. They would never believe what Feng Wu said. Feng Wu knew that this wasn't the time to reason with them, so she frowned at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang and his family knew how capable Feng Wu was, so they nodded and distributed the medicine. As a matter of fact, Feng Wu didn't gather the ingredients just now. They couldn't be found here. It was a potion that Feng Wu made beforehand, and she was only mixing them in the hot water now. As for whether or not it could treat the plague, of course it could. At Feng Wu's level, the plague was nothing. After everyone drank a big bowl of medicine, Feng Wu suggested that they should set out. Gao Mingjiang agreed. The sooner they reached Yu City, the better. Old Mrs. Gao was already having a fever, so she went to talk to Feng Wu. Leave me and my eldest daughter-in-law behind. Feng Wu looked at her in bewilderment. Old Mrs. Gao rolled her eyes at Feng Wu. I know. You're the only one who can make decisions. That's why I'm here. Leave me and my daughter-in-law behind. Feng Wu asked why. Old Mrs. Gao said, We're both running a fever. It's obviously a symptom of the plague. We're going to die, but you're still all right. We can't spread it to you or the people of Northern Yen. Feng Wu gave her a strange look. Since when was the old lady so selfless? Old Mrs. Gao snorted. They're all my children, so of course I care about them. I've had enough. Just let them live. You guys can leave now. Feng Wu chuckled. So, you know that you can't spread the plague to Northern Yen. Old Mrs. Gao snorted. All I know is that if we spread the plague to Northern Yen, even if we can get in, we'll be decapitated later. So, I'm going to wait here to die. Feng Wu waved her off. Don't worry. It'll be all right. After that, she grabbed the old lady and dragged her into the carriage. Old Mrs. Gao was exasperated. Are you an idiot? Why did you do that? Feng Wu chuckled. I told you already. You'll be all right after drinking my medicine. Chapter 3790 Chapter 3790 They're Here, 1. Chapter 3790 They're Here, 1. As expected, after drinking the potion Feng Wu gave her, the eldest daughter-in-law, who had been running a high fever, gradually recovered. Feng Wu chuckled. I told you already. My medicine is amazing. Unfortunately, no one believed her. How could there be such an amazing potion that could cure the plague? If there really was one, the empire wouldn't have to worry about the plague so much. Everyone thought that Feng Wu was only joking, except for Gao Mingjiang, who looked at Feng Wu in amazement. He felt that his sister-in-law's symptoms were very similar to the plague. So, Feng's medicine worked, didn't it? Little Phoenix was complaining in Feng Wu's head. You're so. They won't believe you after hearing what she said. No one will believe that you can treat the plague, nor will they thank you for it. Feng Wu chuckled. I don't need them to give me any credit. Little Phoenix said, Then you. Feng Wu went on laughing. I didn't want them to know that I was the one who had saved them. That way, I would be able to blend into the crowd and join the team. Otherwise, I would be too outstanding. Little Phoenix agreed with her. Little Phoenix said, There are more patients coming. Are you going to save them or not? Feng Wu shrugged. We're in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing we can do. Even if we have a prescription, we won't know where to start. We'll have to wait until we're in Northern Yen. I'll then give them the prescription. As they spoke, they were getting closer and closer to Northern Yen. Gao Mingjiang came to tell Feng Wu, We'll reach the border city in 2 days. Feng Wu nodded. They had been traveling as fast as they could. Occasionally they would run into someone who had caught a fever, but it was getting rarer and rarer. Gao Mingjiang was elated when he saw they no longer run into people with symptoms. As long as they got there before those people did, they should still be able to get into the border city. Shall we travel through the night or? Gao Mingjiang asked for Feng Wu's opinion. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder and saw that they had been traveling for 3 to 4 days and were exhausted. She waved at them. Let's take a break for 4 hours. We still have some time. Gao Mingjiang thought the same, so he nodded and went to make the arrangement. The Gao family used to be very disobedient and would do whatever they wanted, but after Gao Mingjiang demonstrated what would happen when he was away, they realized that they couldn't survive without him. As a result, they didn't bully his family anymore, nor did they exploit Gao Mingjiang because he was their brother. They were all very obedient. Therefore, Gao Mingjiang handled things much more easily. Gao Mingjiang round a spot to let Tnem settle down. It just so happened that there were a lot of rocks here, so they chose a leeward spot, where they could easily start a fire. Everyone had been eating dry food and drinking cold water for the past few days, and they had been feeling dizzy the whole time. As soon as they got off the carriages, old Mrs. Gao's legs gave out and she almost fell. Feng Wu was the first to react. She picked her up and steadied the old lady. Feng Wu looked around. They were in a forest, which was very close to northern Yen. It wasn't dry like the one in the south. Feng Wu took out her bow and arrow and said to Gao Mingjiang, "I'm going to take a look in the woods." "Be careful," said Gao Mingjiang. Chapter 3791 Chapter 3791 They're here, too. Chapter 3791 They're here, too. They weren't worried about Feng Wu, for she had demonstrated how good a hunter she was. To Feng Wu, hunting wasn't a problem at all. She could even hunt large beasts. With little Phoenix around, she wouldn't have any problem at all. However, she only managed to kill 2 rabbits in the end. She couldn't let her spiritual essence fluctuate or make a scene. Luckily, northern Yen was already very close. Once they were in northern Yen, she would be like a fish swimming in the sea. It would be very difficult for them to catch up with her. At that thought, Feng Wu smiled a little. Once they were out of the woods, Feng Wu saw that the others had started a fire, and the water was bubbling. She handed one rabbit to Li and the other to Gao Mingjiang. While Li stewed the fat rabbit with vegetables, Gao Mingjiang roasted the rabbit. Little Phoenix was anxious for Feng Wu. "We're almost there. I'm sure there will be an inspection," Feng Wu said. "I've been hanging out with the Gao family for so long, and I've been waiting for this inspection. Don't worry. I have a plan." Little Phoenix mumbled, "We've been trying to keep a low profile this whole time, and I'm so bored. This place is so uncivilized. I can't believe that I've lived like this for so long." Feng Wu chuckled. "When you were with my beautiful master, you were so high up in the air that you didn't know what the real world was like. This is a great opportunity for you to experience the real world. Maybe you'll learn something." Feng Wu then saw the look on Little Phoenix's face change. "What?" Feng Wu looked at Little Phoenix in bewilderment. Little Phoenix was giving Feng Wu a strange look. Feng Wu asked, "What's wrong?" Little Phoenix said, "You're right." Feng Wu said, "Are you going to?" Little Phoenix nodded. "That's right. I didn't think much of this trip at first and even felt aggrieved, but with your guidance just then, I think I've really learned something incredible. No, I have to do it now. Protect yourself." After that, Little Phoenix entered the ring space through Feng Wu's sleeve and went into seclusion. It had a feeling that it was going to have an epiphany. It would be very impressive when it came out. Feng Wu was astonished as well. Little Phoenix had an epiphany just like that and was going to make a breakthrough. Feng Wu cleared her throat. That was good news, wasn't it? However, Feng Wu was glad to hear that. After all, Little Phoenix was as capable as she was. If Little Phoenix had learned something, so did she, and it would only make her more enlightened. Feng Wu recalled what Master Ling Hu said earlier. Travel the world and comprehend it. What was it that he wanted her to comprehend? What would she get after she found Master Huyan? Somehow, Feng Wu was looking forward to this trip. Just then, they heard the sound of hooves. Although Feng Wu had lost her cultivation ability, she still had a sharp hearing. She could hear the sound of hooves. There was more than one horse. There had to be 3. As expected, 3 horses soon arrived. Feng Wu frowned when she recognized the 3 horses. Weren't they Princess Rao's maids? These people were known for their wanton killing. Chapter 3792 Chapter 3792 The Maids. Chapter 3792 The Maids. They arrived as fast as they could in their scarlet cape. Feng Wu wasn't the only one who had noticed it. Everyone else had their eyes on them. Gao Mingjiang's stomach lurched, and he told the others in a hurry, "Quickly, move to the side. Don't disturb the noble ladies." The others also recognized the 3 horses. Back at the checkpoint, if they hadn't run away in time, they would have been killed by now. The others didn't dare to look at them and only pretended to be busy, hoping that they would leave as soon as possible. Things didn't go as planned. They wanted these 3 people to leave, but the latter suddenly stopped. The girl named Saixia was the chief maid working for Princess Rao. She stopped the horse and was the first to jump off. The members of the Gao family felt their stomachs lurch. They all lowered their heads and didn't dare to move. Miss Saixia was satisfied with what she saw. She was used to intimidating other people. She scanned the crowd with her cold eyes. "Who's the leader here?" They all looked at Gao Mingjiang. Gao Mingjiang stepped out. "We're requisitioning this place. Get lost." She was chasing them away. However, the Gao family couldn't reason with these bossy nobles anymore. Gao Mingjiang nodded. All right, we're leaving now." Gao Mingjiang gave his friends a warning look, telling them to put the things in the carriage and leave. "However, I said requisition. Do you not understand?" Another girl behind Saixia asked in a cold voice. Gao Mingjiang said, "What? I've requisitioned everything. Just get lost." The girl in the blue dress looked like she was going to lose her temper at any moment. Gao Mingjiang said, "But we can't live without them." "Well, that's interesting. How dare a commoner try to bargain with us?" The girl in the blue dress clicked her tongue and glanced at Gao Mingjiang contemptuously. "It's your honor that we even want to use your things. Now get lost." Just then, the third girl said, "Sister Saixia, Sister Xylan, we need someone to take care of our horses and our food. It's not appropriate to chase them all away. How about we leave someone behind to look after us?" Saixia agreed. She glanced at the crowd and frowned. These people were so filthy. They looked like beggars. "It's your call." Saixia left it to Muley, while she sat down on a warm rock and began to cultivate. Muley looked around and pointed at Feng Wu. "You stay here and serve us. The rest of you." Seeing the frightened looks on their faces, Muley said grumpily, "Do you really think we'll take your trash? When you come back in a few hours, you can have everything back." Fearing that Feng Wu would be bullied if she stayed, Li said in a hurry, "My girl is a little clumsy. How about I take her place?" Muley glanced at Li and said, "You two stay here, then." Seeing that Gao Mingjiang still wanted to say something, Muley noticed the impatient look on Saixia's face, so she frowned at Gao Mingjiang. "Leave now. If you offend Sister Saixia, you'll all be killed." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.